recall, we previously presented an information item on this to y'all and to the technical coordinating committee. These funds will help us develop a comprehensive safety action plan for the entire CRTPO planning area, studying any prevailing transportation safety issues within our planning area and suggesting recommendations for how to improve those safety concerns. And so we're very excited for the opportunity to be able to develop the first safety action plan for our planning area. And we are keeping the general public posted on our website in the lower right-hand corner, crtpo.org/CSAP for a comprehensive safety action plan. We also want to acknowledge the other two member jurisdictions that were awarded in round 2 of the Safe Streets program, and that is the town of Huntersville being awarded $240,000 to develop a new comprehensive safety action plan, and the village of Marvin also developing a new comprehensive safety action plan for about $58,000. So certainly seeing a lot of this new funding in our region, and so we're super excited to be partnering with all of you to implement these funds in our planning area. This comes on the coattails of the RAISE award that we received earlier this year. We're branding that study as SAFER, and so that was a $5 million award to study prevailing transportation issues in our disadvantaged community areas. And then again, the Safe Streets funding will focus on our entire planning area. So we're really getting this nice mix of funding to be able to study safety gaps and safety needs in our transportation network. And again, you see the respective websites for each of those studies at the bottom of the screen. Thank you so much.
Great. Congratulations. That is
Thank you.
Incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, $8 million. Thanks again, Will. All right. If everybody's good, we'll go ahead and move on with our agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Got a motion? Got a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. And move on to our public comment period. We have 4 people signed up to speak. And we're going to start with Carson Cone. Carson, if you'd like to come up, and once you start, you'll have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm a little bit nervous, but I want to say congratulations on the $3.15 million grant, and also to Huntersville and I believe Marvin got the grants. Congratulations to all. I would like to thank you all for being here and your concern and commitment in planning our community. I'm here because express toll roads should be illegal. They take public land and they allow certain people who have disposable income to benefit, and other people not to get the advantage of using that benefit. Certainly a case could be said that while certain people are willing to pay the price to use that toll road, they have to suffer. Well, there's a reason that they're willing to pay that price. It's because that benefit is worth it to them. I would like to give a hypothetical story. We can say any bank in Charlotte, there's some bank, and there's 2 homes in Concord. So there's a CEO that works at that bank and there's a custodian. Every day the CEO goes to the bank from his home in Concord and he takes the toll road. He gets 10 minutes more every day with his daughter than does the custodian who comes from Concord and cannot use the toll road. In 18 years of that daughter's lifetime, that CEO gets 750 more hours with his daughter than does the custodian. I have protested this outside this building against toll roads, though not specifically against express lanes, which is my concern. I also have people that I've discussed this issue with who are willing to sign a petition, and I'm open to creating that. Having said that, I also understand that for some of you, this is a problem that you inherited, and not everyone in here is responsible for this, or maybe this isn't applicable to every town in here. But I do appreciate your time with this, and I hope you all have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Our next public comment person, Jeff Carroll. Mr. Carroll? Welcome, Mr. Carroll. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Carroll. I live in Waxhaw Meadows Plantation. I got your 3-minute speech right here, but I can't even look at it. I kind of speak from my heart. I grew up in Union County. I love the agriculture and the countryside I grew up in Stallings and Indian Trails where I basically grew up at. Then I moved to Mineral Springs. And I lost my house that I grew up in, and I got married. When I got married, my mom and dad moved, and I lived in this house in Indian Trail. Now DOT came in and condemned my house in 2023 at that home, which I was just renting to some friends. I didn't live there anymore, just rented it to friends because I grew up there. I wanted to keep the home place. That's where I grew up. But now Waxhaw is now trying to push a parkway through Waxhaw Meadows Plantation. I bought my house, my farm. It's Waxhaw Meadows Plantation for the ones that don't know. It's a 200-acre property was bought by a man that's dead now. I actually bought his home from him before he left. Put an industrial park there. So if you want to see a line that got started in 1992, that's where this line came from, trying to put an industrial park on this property from Providence Road. So even back until 2010, nobody really knew what that line was and what it was for. Even in 2014, I used to go to Bridge and Rail and eat in a restaurant in downtown Waxhaw, which is a little country restaurant. Nobody was in town in 2014. But recently, with new mayor coming into town to Waxhaw, developers started coming in. He was developer driven. And here we go. Now here goes the line, starts moving again. They moved it to one side of our neighborhood. So these people are upset. I'm the president of associations. I'm trying to manage. We only have 14 homes on 200 acres. So everybody has 10-acre tracts. It is an equestrian neighborhood. Everybody's properties are fenced in. But the problem is now they come from this side in 2010. They keep moving the line from this side. And 6-8 years later, they say, what's this line here for? Let's move it over here. This might suit us better. So then these people on this side are mad now because it's coming through their property. So this has been a virus to us for such a long time. I just want this thing, all alignments moved. This is all driven by developers. Watch the Waxhaw Cam, 6:30 at night. There's no traffic downtown. If you live in Mooresville, Indian Trail, we all deal with it. If there's train tracks, we deal with a little bit of traffic. It just comes with it. But if it wasn't for a developer with Yarborough Farms, I'm not going to mention names, we wouldn't even be here tonight. Because there's really no traffic problems in Waxhaw. There's just a little bit, it gets busy at times. But to show you how bad it was, the same guy is trying to do Polo Farms, which is 1,200 acres with another, I'm not mentioning names, but y'all know who they are. But there was back about 6 months ago, Polo Grounds had a meeting in Waxhaw that Waxhaw did not even say they didn't know anything about. And 350 people showed up to protest against this land being developed, which is.
Mr. Carroll, if you would, I'll give you another 20 seconds to wrap up, if you would, please.
What I'm saying is there's a lot of people against this. They just don't know about this. They're just in the dark on it. But I want all my neighbors. These are my neighbors that came. I want them all to stand up. We've been beat up for a long, long time, and we just like to see all alignments out of this neighborhood, please.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Our next speaker is Andy Abajay, and I apologize if I got that wrong. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Andy Abajay. I'm a neighbor of Jeff's, and very first time I've ever attended something like this, but I just wanted to kind of use our opportunity to speak to everyone. And first of all, I didn't even think about an expressway costing and the impact it would have on folks that could not. I'm going to sign up whatever you have because I've learned something new this evening. But I'm just here kind of echoing a little bit of what Jeff said earlier about the disruption and what will take place in our neighborhood. We've been pretty blessed to be out there, but I would just like a little bit transparency. I don't think we've even seen the feasibility study. There's a lot of impact that was going to take place in this neighborhood when and all of you guys are probably homeowners, or many of you in here, but how would you like to know that in a year or two that someone's going to put a parkway right through your neighborhood and you not having a voice in that? It is a little bit, it doesn't make sense to me, but I will tell you, I think just having a little bit more transparency would be very beneficial. I just want to, take this opportunity to say that we are very concerned, and there's been a lot of work that has been done, but not a lot of transparency. So I just ask that we take a very close look at this, and hopefully that something can be done. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And our last speaker that signed up, Mr. Joe Bost. Welcome, Mr. Bost.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Joe Bost. I'm the Chief Advocacy Officer at the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. Madam Chair and members of the board, thank you for your leadership in transportation planning across this region. I'm here to reiterate the business community's unwavering support for increasing capacity on I-77 South using the innovation and efficiency of the private sector in a public-private partnership. As you may remember, we came and spoke to CRTPO in January of last year because the future of this project is incredibly important to our region's vitality. The importance of additional lanes to manage traffic flow has only grown over the last 18 months. 40% of this region's population lives within a 3-mile radius of this corridor. And of the 1.5 million new residents projected by 2050, nearly half will move to that area. P3 delivery of express lanes has become widely accepted as the solution of choice for major transportation projects. Just look at our neighbors. Virginia opened its P3 express lanes on I-66 in 2022. Georgia selected a P3 partner among several competitive bidders for Atlanta's SR 400 project a few weeks ago. And Tennessee put out a P3 procurement notice last month for I-24 express lanes in Nashville. Now, I want to reiterate 3 fundamental points that have been made clear by experts at NCDOT and NCTA. 1, adding managed lane capacity on I-77 South has been supported by this board since 2010, when the MPO adopted a resolution supporting the fast lane study. That support has been reaffirmed in each MTP and STIP prioritization since. 2, the project is simply not financially feasible via traditional public financing. Ignoring the financial realities won't change the outcome. With yearly cost increase of $100 million, we could realistically see this project cost an additional $1 billion just because of delays. 3, last and most importantly, by supporting the P3 delivery method, the CRTPO will keep one of the largest transportation projects in this state moving. Leveraging the private sector to solve a complex transportation challenge means we receive industry innovation, flexibility, and efficiency. And express lanes could open to drivers by the mid-2030s. I appreciate you listening to the business community's perspective and support of the P3 solution. I ask that you trust in the expertise of our transportation planners and vote to move this project forward with the P3 option in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bost. All right, that's concludes all of our public comment period. We'll move on to our ethics and awareness and conflict of interest reminder. Neil, would you help us with that?
In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflict of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any of the matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict or refrain from any undue participation in a particular matter involved.
Hearing none, we'll move on from there. Moving on to the consent agenda. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we remove item 5D from the consent agenda so that we can understand what the residents here are concerned about.
It's not the same thing.
Sorry, scratch that.
Move approval of the
Okay.
consent agenda, A through D.
Okay. So we have a motion. Is there a second? Get a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. All right, moving on, agenda item number 6, our education session, which is our 2055 MTP land use scenario planning. Neil? Like you've got several people that are going to help you with this.
Yes.
Super.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Neil Burke, Secretary for the CRTPO, also serving as Project Manager for the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. We're here tonight to talk to you about land use scenario planning. This is really the only way that we've been able to, at a regional level, measure trends in land use and how they might impact future transportation investments. So we began this effort with our 2045 MTP in 2018. We continued that and ramped up our efforts, working with your member jurisdictions, relying on past scenario planning efforts during the 2050 MTP. And really, what we're here to talk with you about tonight for a few minutes and get your feedback on is if the approach that we have lined out in the 2050 MTP is still appropriate, and we'll share some feedback that we received from your TCC members. So on September 5th, we convened a workshop of TCC members following that monthly meeting, really to show them what we had done in terms of looking at regional land use trends and also getting their feedback on what they would like to see for 2055. This scenario planning, it's really intended to be also a resource for your local initiatives, your local land use plans, how you might interact with your neighbors in terms of land use and transportation planning. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Allison Flewitt from Kimley Horn. She's the project manager on the Kimley Horn side for the 2055 MTP. We also have Stephen Stansberry with us from Kimley Horn. And they're going to be kind of walking through an overview of what scenario planning is, how we've used it throughout this region, but also through the metropolitan transportation planning process. And, we're also going to be seeking some input from the board members tonight as to the regional drivers and some of the metrics that you'd like to see coming out of this process for the 2055 MTP. And this won't be the last time you're hearing about scenario planning. We'll continue to update the board on the scenarios that we develop and some of the metrics that we receive. So at this point, go ahead and turn it over to Allison Flewitt with Kimley Horn.
Thank you, Neil. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today about the land use scenario planning effort. And as Neil said, to tell you about some of the outcomes and discussion that was held during our recent scenario planning workshop. So as Neil mentioned, the intent of what we're doing with scenario planning is to really just understand what this can mean for our region. Just a quick little additional background here. Scenario planning is actually something that is required as a part of our federal process for metropolitan transportation planning development. Now, as a part of that requirement, it doesn't really define what scenario planning necessarily has to entail. So there's some latitude for each MPO to understand what's going to be the best fit for that region. So for us, we need to kind of begin with that process of defining what scenario planning can do here, where we feel like it's going to be most effective, and some of those key decision points. And that's some of what Stephen's going to help recount and go through with us today. Now, part of that is starting with the good work that's already been done. Neil mentioned this is not a new concept here at the regional level, nor is it a new concept for your jurisdictions across the region. So we're able to draw on a lot of great information, both in the previous scenario planning efforts that have been done by the CRTPO, and also the data that supports this from some of your jurisdictional land use plans, comprehensive plans, transportation plans, and codes as well. All of that comes together to help us identify what we can do for the future. And I know that some of this can sound a little bit, high level. We start to talk about scenario planning. It's like, is this a subset of the planning for the planning? Well, it kind of is, but this is a safe space where we can start to think about trends. We can understand, here's where we are today. We kind of get that understanding of our baseline, our benchmark. Now we can project out if things were to essentially progress business as usual, what might that look like into the future? Then we get to start introducing those scenarios, those alternative paths where we think about potential changers, drivers of change that may affect this region. We can then monitor what those mean to us, whether that's from a performance standpoint to some of our transportation metrics, to our economic vitality, our housing, lots of different things that kind of come into play there. By providing those illustrative examples, this is kind of a safe space for us to explore those potential future outcomes and then draw some conclusions, because we do this at this point in time in our MTBP development very much on purpose. The end game here is that we want you all to have this information. We want CRTPO to have the information from our scenario planning process as something that you can refer back to as we get into soliciting projects from our member jurisdictions. That's something that's hopefully a helpful piece of information. As we get into scoring those projects, prioritizing what's going to matter to us, and ultimately financially constraining our transportation plan. So this is really a backdrop and a helpful informational guidepost for us along the way. So Stephen's going to take us through some of the stage that has been set for this process across the region, and then the conversation that was held as we went through our scenario planning workshop earlier this month.
Great. It's good to see everyone tonight. Thanks for the hospitality and thanks for teeing that up, Neil. Just as Allison was alluding to, we've got a lot of work yet to do on this particular task. We feel like our timing's just right to get in front of you regarding what all is entailed with its process and the ingredients and those sorts of things. But I want to go back in time a bit because I see some gray hair in the audience, which I also share myself. And I wonder if any of you may have been a participant in some of these other scenario planning activities that have occurred throughout the region. And my suspicion is the answer is yes. I know that many of us coalesced around at least one or two of those, the largest of which was that 2013 Connect Our Future endeavor. So many of you recall, we kind of came together, Urban Land Institute played a part in that, as well as the COG. And that was a wonderful opportunity for us to explore as a region, the what if scenarios, the where we grow, the how we grow, and how do we accommodate the movement of people and goods within and throughout our region. And so this isn't a new concept. And as Allison mentioned, it is a requirement of the MTP process. It's wonderful that CRTPO has carried on the tradition of building on the past as we endeavored to contemplate how we're going to navigate it for this particular update. And I don't know whether you need to hit the advance or whether I do, but that button's not working. Perfect. Wonderful. Or not. You can also try the keyboard slides out. Or I could just stand up here and tell jokes. Wonderful. So you may need to be my technical assistant. Wonderful. So, I mean, effectively, I just want to break this down. This is not overtly complicated. And many of you do this in your own work. And so I just want to make this a little bit more transparent in terms of what this process includes. First of which is, why are we calling it land use scenario planning? This is a transportation planning organization. Why are we examining land use so closely? All of you sitting at those seats understand the answer to that because land use drives travel demand. It's the demand side of the equation. The transportation supply is the other half of that equation, and that's the transportation plan itself, right? It's the infrastructure that we put on the ground to accommodate the movement of people that is a result of that demand. So we have to examine it. We have to better understand, are we working synergistically with our land use counterparts? And that's largely you, the member jurisdictions. Your land development plans have a large impact on the transportation system. We can try to keep up with growth, but if we don't better coordinate it, we're going to miss the opportunity to bring about the efficiencies and effectiveness that we want. And so the concepts are largely built around the how we grow, the where we grow sort of concepts. And we essentially want to figure out what are the big things from a regional perspective that are most important at this moment in time. I say that because there are different things that influence regions at specific moments in time. Some regions aren't growing as fast as ours. And so maybe looking at things through a different lens is going to be more important. In other places, technology is going to be more important. In other places, we need to mix all those things together. But we want to understand what those regional drivers are because they're what we pivot around. And I'm going to explain that a bit more in a moment. We also need to rely on the technical tools that are necessary to evaluate these alternative futures. And that's effectively a computer model, if you will. In this case, it's a community biz model. You've probably heard that term referenced more than once or twice. We take the concepts and we build replications of those in that model. We also need to decide what's important to measure. You know, it's the old adage, you only achieve what you measure is so true here. What we choose to evaluate largely helps inform what we do with the information. So we've been thoughtful about that with the TCC, kind of evaluating what it is that is going to be most important for this particular MTP update. And then we run the model. I mean, quite frankly, there's a calibration process and all those sorts of things that you would expect, but we run the model and we see what results we get. There's some results interpretation. You're going to be privy to all that information. But I think one of the most important things that we have to carry as a responsibility is ensuring that we're reporting the results in ways that people can actually use the results. This doesn't need to be just a technical document that goes above everyone's head that really sits on a shelf or is something that maybe is not widely understood by communities. And so we're going to work with you all on that. Do you mind advancing the next slide? Wonderful. And so in the 2050 MTP, so this is your last transportation plan, there were 3 regional drivers. If you recall, we were supposed to all be in flying cars that were autonomously driven. This was promised to us several decades ago. We're still waiting. We're getting closer. Things are getting exciting. But at that moment in time, we really weren't certain about what that timeline might have included. So that was one of the reasons why it was in there. It was in vogue in the moment as something we needed to be sure we had a handle on. The other one is just understanding the growth patterns, as I mentioned, that growth having the biggest impact of where we grow and how we grow on our transportation. And then there was a trend at the time. However, we didn't realize how impactful it might be, but working from home, this was pre-COVID, right? To examine, because we have a region that really had a higher propensity for that when compared to other regions already, given the type of our base economics, it became something that was important to consider. There's also different levels of intensity. As you can imagine, if you were to draw 3 different futures, you could do the absolute most of something, you could do some of it, you could do a little bit of it. And so we're trying to understand the order of magnitude influence that any of these things may have on our transportation system. The result is simple math. 3 times 3 equals 9, right? We have 9 scenarios that would result. We would evaluate those scenarios, but we also would have one more, which would be the business as usual. What if we just continued on the straight line trajectory that we're currently on? Next slide, please. So the results of building those scenarios in your last MTP included essentially these core ingredients. This is the 9 scenarios represented illustratively from your last plan. You can look at them and kind of blur your eyes and kind of begin to understand the variety of those 3 times 3 equals 9 kind of approaches, but it was just mainly to provide an at-a-glance look at what each of those different scenarios might offer in the way of ingredients and the influence of those driving forces. Next slide. I mentioned a moment ago about the importance of the performance measures. So building the scenarios is one thing. Running the model to look for specific characteristics becomes the next important thing. In your last plan process, I thought it was really wise. You organized your performance measures to specifically address your 6 goal areas. Novel idea, right? If we are keenly interested in advancing our goals and realizing them as an outcome, we probably ought to measure the things that contribute to achieving those goals. And so we think that's a great idea. We want to carry that forward into a report card for this future MTP update. Next slide. So as mentioned earlier, we held a work session with the TCC. The timing couldn't be better. In advance of that, we did a questionnaire with your TCC and figured out that more than 60% of your communities had just recently adopted either a new land use plan, comprehensive plan, or unified development ordinance. That's really important. That means things are different today in terms of what we know about the likely future than the last time this plan was updated. So it's really timely that we have this opportunity to examine what that might look like. And of course, what we're going to be doing is collecting those plans and ensuring that we reflect them in this modeling effort. Some other things that we spoke with the TCC about were some of the trends that we're experiencing as a region right now. And those trends don't have to just be transportation. Obviously, there's economic trends, there's environmental trends, there's changes in just the demographic profile of our region, in addition to the absolute growth that we're also experiencing. We felt it was important for them to be cognizant of that as we asked them to weigh in on a series of decisions. They know about the history, obviously, of the 2050 scenario planning process, but we really wanted to use the time with them to contemplate what we might do different. And I think in large part, it's okay to affirm when we did a good job the last go around to continue doing what we did in the last MTP update, but to expect that there should be some changes. And so the changes that we discussed, if you don't mind, the next slide, were essentially these key takeaways. When it came to regional drivers, I think one of the things that was quickly understood was that we're not likely to be flying in cars or working in an environment where most of our network is completely autonomous. And that's not to be flip, but it's just simply an acknowledgement that that will be an important thing to monitor over time, but it's not necessarily one of the driving forces that's going to influence transportation performance over the next 5 years. We'll have another opportunity when this plan is updated in the future. The other component of that was just really understanding that work from home has become a really profound thing to consider. Having lived through COVID and watched those numbers spike and experiencing what occurred with that and contemplating whether or not that persisted into the future or not. I mean, right now we're experiencing a return to work, but we don't know what might happen in the future. So we want to contemplate what that might look like in terms of a regional driver. So if you can imagine, I showed you earlier that there were 3 driving forces in the last update. We want to bring some focus this go around and instead focus on 2 driving forces, which is really the work from home and the how we grow and where we grow. And as a part of that, place renewed emphasis on the performance measures. There's some really good performance measures that are already included in the model. There's 17 of them. They measure things like proximity to future activity centers or average travel time, travel delay. They measure proximity to things like premium transit service, both today and in the future, things you would logically expect. But your TCC was very articulate about the types of things that they believe might help modernize this process. And so we've been collecting that information from them and believe that a good use of our time would be to enhance what we measure as a part of this process to bring greater precision and understanding. And then lastly, they shared with us that while the technical documentation is incredibly important, they wanted to be sure that you all had a clear understanding of this, not just them. And I think that that was a request for us to be sure that whatever we generate could be something that you all would feel comfortable sharing as a public-facing summary. Something that when you need to talk with your boards and commissions and your committees, your constituents that you serve, the interest groups that are active in your community, that there's a backdrop of shared understanding for what this may look like, what those results actually mean. And so we took that to heart, and we've got several examples from where we've done this work elsewhere around the country. We're going to choose the best of the best from that, work with your TCC to find out what may work best. We're also going to be integrating that with the public engagement effort so that we can leverage that information such that our public is reacting in an informed way to the things that are useful pieces of information to help shape their opinions about things moving forward. So timeline, hopefully these orbs look familiar to you, just carried forward. I wanted to put some months in there so you understand. There is a little bit of sense of urgency. We're moving briskly at this point, trying to ensure that there's not delays in your process. But most importantly, we want to be done with this by January, not because we don't like scenario planning, but because you have a call for projects that's occurring in January. And we felt like, and I think Neil and Bob have been very helpful at kind of articulating the moments in time that are going to be most important for you all in this process. We're going to do our best to ensure that that work is done in advance of that so that you have it as you contemplate your own individual representations of those call for projects. But you can see where we're at right now. We're developing concepts. The scenario construction will begin. It's underway right now. In fact, that work will continue through October. We'll be working to refine the performance measures, which means modifying the model to ensure that it measures those things accurately in November. And we'll be pushing the button, so to speak, early in December so that we can calibrate and ensure that we're getting confidence in those results, such that we will be generating public-facing summaries of the material come January. And that was a mouthful, and I know I hit you all with a lot, but I certainly love to entertain any questions you may have about it. Outside of that, Neil has assured me that we'll have other opportunities to brief you on our progress and entertain any questions you may have then.
Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Driggs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to interpret what you were saying as far as the assumptions you make about growth.
Mhm.
It sounded like you have an idea about growth and then you plan your transportation around that. But in fact, growth depends a lot on where the transportation is. So, I mean, right now in Charlotte, we are working on transportation planning, and we have a UDO. And one of the challenges our staff is facing at the moment is how do we reconcile what we intend for different parts of Charlotte with where we allocate and how we spend road money, for example. But how do you figure that? I mean, are you actually recognizing that your transportation decisions influence your growth and that therefore these things have got to be brought along in tandem, or how does that work?
I think it's a very timely question. I appreciate the way you asked it. Absolutely. I guess it's a short answer. The more lengthy answer is effectively all of your local communities had some knowledge base about their current transportation plans. Many of you have individual transportation plans yourself. You also have the benefit of the past MTP as a backdrop when you develop those plans. And that has influenced in many respects, especially things like transit and highway investments, has influenced where you might choose to locate different types of land uses, as well as the intensity of them. I think that's probably that last part is one of the most important pieces of it. Effectively, what we're going to be able to do is to hold constant transportation in some of these scenarios so that we can see the influence of land use and then recognize that the compendium to this, if we're looking at land use through this scenario planning, the other piece of this is the travel model that you hear so often referenced. So there's updates of the travel model that will be able to be run that give us a level of confidence about how the system is being, how it's performing under different conditions. And if we see deficiencies, that's the moment when we need to contemplate, well, which of these alternate futures that has that combination of land use and transportation investments, which one works best for us? There isn't going to be one that's perfect. Just to be full disclaimer, and kind of a spoiler at the beginning, there isn't anything that will ever be perfect, but what it does is it creates another piece of information that allows policymakers to make informed choices about what is the best package or composition of investments in different transportation infrastructure. But also I would offer maybe even things that we might consider at the local level, like policies and programs and the land use decisions that we make on an incremental basis. It's not a perfect answer, but I appreciate, yes, the intent and the expectation is that we would be considering those simultaneously.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. So the growth and the land use tends to be looked at within our own municipalities. Just curious, we have some municipalities that take a more conservative approach. They try to manage growth in anticipation of the infrastructure not being in place. We have others that have different opinions on it. But regionally, the traffic is impacted, right? So if one municipality grows a lot faster than another, the traffic doesn't stop at their border, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that the traffic within one municipality looks different than that of another. It just means that they're accounting for it in their land use plan. So I'm curious, how does this forward-looking approach take into consideration regional planning? Because we talk about regional in here. We are a regional organization. But when we analyze individual projects, it's at the municipality level typically. And in fact, if anything, we get penalized today in a lot of ways when we look at things regionally, because then the project becomes too big and it goes past the budget allowance for a project. So then it gets split into multiple projects. So how do you consider that when you're looking at a much further time horizon?
Yeah, you guys are playing Stump the Consultant tonight. That's a good question. I think that the fair answer to offer is that we're going to be at an altitude where we're not necessarily looking incrementally at each community and kind of contemplating the saturation of growth at any one moment in time. But I do want to speak to the point of your question, which is traffic, transportation demand, if you will, is a little bit like water, right? It knows no jurisdictional boundary. It's just going to continue on its journey, so to speak. And I think that one of the best things that I can offer you is that when you have a regional plan, it's taking into account some agreement about how much we're going to grow and generally where we're going to grow. So there's a forecasting process that you all have endorsed those forecasts in the past. So we have to rely on some assumptions, and those are informed assumptions. That particular backdrop of forecasted growth becomes something that you as a policy board have the opportunity to ask questions of each other as you're making local decisions. It's an imperfect system, and yet it's the checks and balance that we have in place today. And you know, as you just mentioned, that sometimes there can be too much of a good thing in one location. I would offer to you that the scale with which we plan for these long horizon periods is a much higher altitude than the requisite studies that are necessary when those proposals come online. And that's why you'll see at the smallest level a traffic study done for development. But projects of regional significance require much greater levels of cooperation and analysis and an understanding of the sphere of influence that they may have that is less than local, but ultimately regional. So I hope that at least addresses in an honest way the answer to your question.
Other questions or comments in regards to the scenario concepts? Is there any other information that you need from us at this time?
Just your support. We've got a fast track schedule and we will be back to offer regular updates. I thank you for your time.
Right. Thank you. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 7, the FTA section 5307 Transit Agency Annual Reports. Jarrell Leonard's here to guide us through this item.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jarrell Leonard from CRTPO. I'm the transit planner, and I'm going to be leading this report. So here's a quick overview of the presentation. Going to do the background, the eligible activities, also the role that CRTPO does with this annual report with 5307 and the 5307 presentations for all the providers, including Iredell County Area Transit, Mecklenburg County Transportation System, Union County Transportation, Charlotte Area Transit System, and also a brief one talking about Rock Hill Fort Mill Area Transportation Study. So a little bit of background on 5307. It is a program that is set up for urban areas of 50,000 or more in population. It is funds to allow to plan, purchase, also do any type of facilities for public transportation. It also provides mobility options for outside of motor vehicles, but also specifically for seniors as well as disabled persons. And there are 4 transit agencies or public transportation agencies within the CRTPO area that receives these funds. Of those eligible activities, once again, planning, also critical investments such as capital investments, facilities, fleet vehicles for public transportation entities, also compliance with the American Disabilities Act, also known as ADA, compliant facilities and public transit service, as well as operating costs and operating assistance to help with any providers that have 100 buses or less per the National Transit Database, also known as NTD. In July 2021, CRTPO had adopted a new formula for 5307, and the CRTPO also adopted last year the Transit Providers Group and gave the enabling to form the Transit Providers Work Group, and this is the body which the annual report now coordinates. And also the MOU provided ability for the providers to receive the funds, and that was done in 2021 as well. Also in 2021, all of our providers became direct recipients per the 5307 formula program. Paragraph 8 of the MOU specifies that every year by September 1, the recipients of the 5307 funds must provide an annual report of their activities in which they use the funds, as well as how they plan on using it in the upcoming fiscal year, as you can see on the screen. So the first entity that is going to present is Iredell Area Transit System, also known as ICATS. Brad Johnson is going to be presenting. Brad?
Good evening. A little bit about our system. We are with Iredell County, and we currently have 31 vehicles. That was with 2 vehicles that we had an expansion from 2018 funds, but the vehicles were just delivered. We do about 140,000 trips a year at 877,000 miles. Well, we have 51 employees. Although Jarrell said that we all became direct recipients in FY21, we are just now getting the process, everything completed with the FTA. We got final approval, and then TRAMS has closed. So once TRAMS comes back up, then we'll be able to actually submit for our first reimbursement. But this is the FY21, 20 through 24 funding that we have, and the reason why it's allocated anything is because we haven't been able to apply for any money. NCDOT told us that they were going to help us through this process of becoming a direct recipient, and that was kind of the end of it. We've got all the stuff to FTA. We've waited on them, and it would be hurry up and wait, get everything to them 3 or 4 months later. Oh, we need one more document. 6 months later, one more thing. And so finally got everything through, and finally have our ECHO where we can actually do a federal drawdown. For our 24 money, we will have vehicle replacements of the $346,000. And then the $140,000 is mandated by the table 3A, is because we have less than 100 vehicles, but because we are part of the CRTPO, we are limited on the amount of money that we can use for operating. And so we can only use $140,000 for operating. And then we're going to transfer $300,000 to JARC, which is Job Access Reverse Commuting. We use that funds to help get people to and from work. Right now, about 33% of the trips that we provide are work transportation. And so that $300,000 there will help us, run those trips. These are unobligated funds. As soon as everything gets up and going with TRAMS, we'll be able to submit our TIP amendments for 22, 23 to y'all. Then they will go to the NCDOT, and then we'll be able to draw down those funds. We are banking some funds for a capital project in the prioritization 7.0. We are asking for money for a new facility. We currently operate out of a 1,400 square foot house. And so it's not ideal. And so with some of this money here, we'll be able to hopefully identify a place to build a new facility to further grow. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Johnson? Comments? Yeah, great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next provider to present will be Mecklenburg County Transportation System, Gina Morrell.
Good evening, board members. My name is Gina Merrill. I am with Mecklenburg County with the Mecklenburg Transportation System. So this is our presentation tonight. I just want to start off that we have a tremendously hardworking staff that work every day to make sure that our clients and consumers try and maintain some of their independence, that they always drive with empathy, serve with empathy, and help our clients and consumers ride with dignity with our services. So we provide both mandated and non-mandated, non-emergency trips for customers going to medical appointments, nutritional appointments through our senior nutrition program, our congregate sites, employment, post-secondary, adult daycare appointments, and adult sites. So we primarily serve seniors and those with disabilities, and we serve all of Mecklenburg County. And as you can see, the numbers, 12% of those are seniors 65 years and older, and 5.6% of the population are those living with disabilities that are 18 and older. Currently, well, for fiscal year 24, we had a fleet size, we had 25 light transit vehicles and 3 passenger vans. Primarily, most of our services are provided through our vendor partners. There's a list of the vendor partners that we had in fiscal year 24. Some of those have changed with fiscal year 25, so next year's report might look slightly different. On average per month, we provide 32,409 passenger trips for a total of 454,000 revenue miles. I want to put this slide in because some of our, like I said in our first slide, we provide Medicaid and non-Medicaid trips. And obviously our Medicaid trips are hopefully predominantly funded by Medicaid through the federal and state government. But a lot of times people think that that's the majority of our work. And while it does have 55%, 45% of our trips are done for non-Medicaid eligible folks. And that's what the 5307 pays for. We did have a STIP amendment that came to you using our fiscal year 20, federal fiscal year 21 funds. As you can see, we do have a balance left of our 5307 funds. And the predominant reason for this is because we were awarded a high amount of ARPA and CRSA funds, which of course have no requirement for county match. So we wanted to make sure that we spent all of that first before we move on to the 5307 funds, which require either a 20% local match or 50% local match. So for fiscal year 24, we actually did use a little bit of our federal fiscal year 19 and 20 funds. For the majority of it was our ARPA funds. And going into fiscal year 25, we're going to try and spend the rest of our ARPA funds and our CRSA funds before we before we start utilizing our 5307. So you can see we have 6.38 million in unobligated amounts right now. We have every intention, in order for us to continue to provide the amount of service that we currently providing, we need to be able to use these funds between now and fiscal year 28. So we will be using these funds in the next 2 to 3 fiscal years. For the STIP that we did do, so because we provide services for seniors and those with disabilities, we fall under the ADA category of 5307, which means we're technically classified as capital. For us, that means that it's predominantly an 80%, 20%. The federal government funds 80% of our services, and the county funds 20%. The capital cost of contracting here, which you see was our biggest STIP amount, that is actually for our vendors, our contracted services. So those are the folks, the private companies that go out and pick up our clients and take them to the appointments they need to. Of course, our preventative maintenance, and then our safety and security, which can include a lot of our security cameras and the software that runs our security cameras on our vehicles. So again, as we spoke, the 6.38 million, we do plan to obligate that. We will have one application for our STIP that we got approved through this board and through NCDOT. We will be putting in an application through the federal government in TRAMS. And then, like I said, we're going to be planning, our expenses depend on the demand for our services. So we're going to be monitoring that on a regular basis so that we can make sure that we use the 5307 funds in a timely manner. But again, we want to use our ARPA and our CRSA money first. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Great. Questions for Gina? Anyone? Great job. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Our next presenter will be from Union County Transportation, Teresa Torres. Teresa.
Good evening. I'm Teresa Torres. I am the Director of Union County Transportation. How are you? So a little bit about our transit agency. We do demand response service. We transport anyone in the county from the age of 0 to 15, as long as they have a parent or guardian with them. 16 years plus can ride on their own. We just made that change 2 weeks ago. We used to be 18 years or older. Union County's population is 263,732. In FY 24, Union County completed 78,000 trips to 1,433 unique clients. With 24 vehicles in our fleet, we drove 667,000 miles and did 44,000 service hours. We have our FFY 21 money, we got approved for our STIP. And then the FTA has endorsed it, but like Brad from Iredell said, trans has closed. So once that reopens, we'll be able to submit that application. For our FFY 22, you all just approved that tip tonight, and that will be going on to DOT for the STIP approval and then to the FTA for their endorsement. The monies will be used for capital renovation of our facility, safety, cameras for our vehicles, and PM maintenance. So again, it's just saying that we received our endorsement letter for our 21 funds. We have got the approval for the tip. And then for our FFY 23 through $24, we will be working to figure out what we will use them on. After the first two amounts, we'll plan the rest. Any questions?
Questions for Teresa? Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Our next provider that's going to be presenting is the Charlotte Area Transit System, also known as CAT, Chad Howell.
Good evening, Madam, excuse me. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and board members. I am Chad Howell. I'm the CAT CFO, and I'll be presenting our 5307 annual report to you this evening. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Just to add a little bit of detail to the summary here, over the past 2 years, so FFY 22 and FFY 23, we have purchased 59 buses of all types, which was about $31 million. Again, we're trying to refresh our fleet. This is both in our over-the-road buses and also then the buses, the typical 40-foot buses that you see around town, as well as our paratransit fleet, STS paratransit fleet. We've also spent approximately $8 million on general maintenance activities, and this is both across bus, rail, and our facilities. Moving into 2024, continuing the theme, we will be, other than debt service, we will be focused really on about $20 million here in maintenance activities. And again, this is to focus on ensuring that our fleets are in the best shape possible, and where possible, starting to as we've done in 22 and 23, bring the age of our bus fleet down closer to 12 years, if at all possible. We have obligated all of our funds, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Great. We love it. Just spend it down to zero. Questions for Brad? All right. Great job. Everybody's done such a great job.
Thank you for your time.
And very thorough on their information. Jarrell, other information you want to share with us?
Just a couple more slides. So the Rock Hill Fort Mill area transportation study is a separate MPO that, in lieu of them providing a presentation, they just sent written correspondence specifying how they have spent federal fiscal year 2017 through federal fiscal year 23 funds and COVID aid relief fund, also known as CARES, and ARP, which is the fund 5307 funds through that time, in lieu of giving presentation. Are there any questions?
Any final questions? Joelle? No? Great job. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 8, our 2026-2035 TIP development process and our NCDOT prioritization 7.0. Travis.
Hey everyone, Travis Johnson with the CRTPO. Here to talk about prioritization 7.0, giving a brief update on the discretionary needs projects. So I'm going to go over the division needs updates. So we're going to talk about the division needs, do a quick review of the scoring criteria, and then talk about the remaining schedule for the calendar year. So the P 7.0 subcommittee, which is a subcommittee of the TCC, met on August 28th. And they will meet additionally as necessary. So depending upon the results of the public comment period, or if we receive any additional communication from NCDOT, we will pull the committee together. But we allocated local input points at this meeting for the division needs projects. So as part of this allocation, we recommended not allocating local input points to cascaded regional input projects. And this aligns with current plans from both NCDOT divisions and our planning area. And so beyond that modification, we have followed the CRTPO methodology for the remainder of the projects. The draft spreadsheets are also included in your agenda packet. So for the scoring criteria, local input points make up 50% of the division needs tier, which is 25% of our local input points, and then 25% of NCDOT's local input points, which is why aligning with the division is so important. Because if we know the division's not applying to regional impact projects, and us applying points to it would only be half of the total available. So for that methodology, which we use the 2050 NTP methodology because it aligns with the STI legislation that requires quantitative data, qualitative input, and modal allocation. The NPO's local input points is based upon population, which is why we have a significant number of local input points. And then we also allocate no more than 100 local input points to a project. For our methodology, we assign maximum points that are eligible to a project. We coordinate with the divisions to achieve mutual point assignment, but of course the board has the ability to deviate from the recommended list based upon public comment. We use the 2050 methodology, so we align all the projects based upon their MTP horizon year and MTP score. And then if a project does not have an MTP horizon year or score, we organize them based upon their P70 point score, and then we allocate points until we run out. And then for non-highway projects, we sort the projects based upon their P7.0 score list, and the highest ranking project for each mode receives the maximum allocation of 100 points. And then after that, we go down the list of 100 points for the highest ranking projects until we run out of points. For the schedule for the remainder of the year, we're here presenting this as an update. We'll come back in October to ask to open a public comment period from October 18th to November 1st. After the public comment period, we'll then ask for action in November, and then we will assign local input points, and then we should have the draft list in January. So with that, I will pause and see if anyone has any questions.
Questions for Travis? The input? Hearing none. Super. All right. The great thing is you're teed up for the next one. We'll move on to agenda item 9, the complete streets policy. Travis.
Hey, everyone. So we're going to talk about our complete streets, a draft complete streets policy the CRTPO is working on. I want to talk about the background of complete streets, talk about our draft policy and the next steps. So complete streets are a process and approach to street design that considers all modes of transportation. It's ensuring that our roadways consider spaces for people, spaces for bikes, cars, mass transit, shared mobility, creature comforts, essentially those elements that make it more places and provides access for all users. So there's not one road or one type, but they may include bike lanes, wide shoulders, accessible transit stops. It's a different way of thinking about building roads. CRTPO is committed to ensuring all roadways users are accommodated through our region. So again, we've followed complete streets through NCDOT policy. We're just looking to add to by creating our own policy to see that as a further refinement for our organization, a commitment to complete streets. And again, this would be a region-wide policy, and we'd still support and hope that local jurisdictions would still adopt their own complete streets policy that allow you to fine-tune it to make sure it fits for your communities. So complete streets, again, is looking at a roadway that maybe doesn't have bicycle facilities, no bus stops, it's auto-dependent, the land uses line up with more of an auto-centric design, and rethinking that design to where it is more of a place that you take into consideration all users, and that it provides an ability to move more people because you have that ability to allow for mode shift and allow for choice for users. So North Carolina Department of Transportation updated their complete streets policy in 2019. We started doing research for our own complete streets policy in early of 2024, and we did peer interviews and policy review of other MPOs, regional planning councils, and organizations that are focused on doing complete streets policies like Smart Growth America. So we did virtual interviews with all these organizations, asked them questions about their adoption process and what they went through to adopt a complete streets policy. Draft policy was included in your agenda packet. This policy has been brought to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Work Group twice. And the Bicycle Pedestrian Work Group is a subcommittee of the TCC. Brought to a transportation staff meeting, and then we've been working with Smart Growth America and some of their feedback to help also add for further refinement of the policy. And so we're asking just for additional review and feedback prior to going to public comment period. So for next steps, we're here this month to just provide information, let you know the policy exists, and show you what it looks like in its current form. If you have any feedback or comments, we'd love to hear it. Next month, I'll come back to open a public comment period on the draft policy, address any of the comments that we receive from that feedback. Also continue to work with our partners to see if there are ways to refine it and improve our policy, and then come back for adoption in November. And then we would then tie updates to this policy to the MTP process. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Questions for Brian? Councilmember Griggs?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So how does this policy affect funding applications or distributions? Does it impact points? I'm just wondering, once we have that policy, what enforcement is there, or what requirement is there that streets be built? Because we have a streets policy too, which I understand is coordinated with the one that you're discussing. But where does it actually apply?
So it would apply to all projects that would be submitted to us. So ideally, they would fit the Complete Streets policy before submittal. So currently, when you submit a policy, we've been following NCDOT, which requires that Complete Streets form to be completed at the time of submittal for TIP. And so that is a much later in the process, and that can sometimes lead to issues with discrepancies with funding and just ensuring that the community's goals are more refined. We give them more time to think through what they would like to see. So through this, we're just hoping to get that commitment of what the community would like to see earlier in the process when they're submitting it to us for the first time, and just kind of get everyone thinking about it as they submit. So there is no extra points. It's not like it would affect the distribution. So ideally, but projects as they go through the process will have to meet NCDOT's requirement. So this is essentially moving that process earlier and then giving us more time to think about it as a region.
Thank you.
Great question. Others? Renee?
On this open public comment period, is there outreach specifically to underrepresented communities? And if so, what does that look like?
So we are going to follow our public involvement plan for outreach. We know we'll release the information for it. This is a more technical document. So it's the primary feedback we're looking for is more of the technical side, but we'll follow all of our processes in the public involvement plan to make sure that it's going out to the communities as required.
Others? Okay, hearing none, great. We'll see you next month for that request for action. Moving on, agenda item number 10, our strategic plan goal number 5, implementation update. Brian.
Good evening, and thank you very much. My name is Brian Elgort, and I'm the Project Implementation Coordinator for the CRTPO. I'm here to give you the fall 2024 update on the CRTPO's efforts to implement our strategic plan, including some recommendations that I will be returning with next month for adoption. Here's a brief overview of our agenda for this evening. I'll start by sort of giving an overview of what our focus has been for this year. Then we will look at a couple of some items that we will be doing sort of in the next 6 to 12 months, followed by a couple of work group reviews, as well as wrapping up with our review of the discretionary grants program and the project oversight committee. So our focus for 2024 was Goal 5, which is all about operations. Goal 5 directs us to continuously improve our internal operations to fulfill the CRTPO's mission and vision, which are up on the screen for y'all. We really focused on 2 specific strategies, which are about organizational efficiency improvements and evaluating committees and working groups. Internally, sort of behind the scenes, we've done some work to overhaul our data management practices, and we're also preparing for phase 2 of our staffing and resources study. For a look at some of our upcoming work, these are things that we've been working on for the past several months, and we think that sort of implementation sort of stuff will be realized soon. The Regional Multimodal Opportunities Map is something that Curtis Bridges and Jarrell Leonard have been working on, and we're hoping to publish that map in the next coming months. The phase 2 of our staffing and resources study, which is a follow-up on a 2019 study that we did, is expected to start in 2025. The next committees and work groups that we'll be looking at are the Bike Ped work group, the Transit Providers work group, and the Transportation Staff meetings. And finally, later this month or next month, we'll be launching our Grants Assistance Program, which will have a database of grant opportunities online, as well as offer technical assistance to our members interested in pursuing those grants. For 2025, we've already started to look at what we want to focus on. From goal 2, a strategy is a branding and communications plan, and we plan to work on developing the scope for an RFP for that. We're also coordinating with Central Carolina Regional Council to develop a member academy, which will enhance the education we provide to TCC and the board about how the CRTPO functions and how your roles function within our organization. We're also working with them on a leadership institute to provide training for delegates interested in serving as chair or vice chair in the future. And finally, we plan on reviewing our strategic plan strategies 3 years on from plan adoption to assure that everything is still aligned with our mission and vision and what we are currently working on. For our work group evaluations, the first group we looked at was our CRTPO NC Turnpike Authority Liaison Group, which was informally established in July of 2018 with the direct sort of purpose of assisting with communications coordination and messaging, as well as policy development specifically regarding tolling scenarios and managed lane usage. Currently, this group meets quarterly. In 2025, we want to shift that to a quarterly presentation and discussion at transportation staff meetings. These presentations will be scheduled during the transportation staff meetings that directly precede our TCC meetings. We want to maintain the original intent of the group, which is to maintain communications and coordination efforts. But our hope is this will widen the audience to increase accessibility and visibility on these issues. It's worth noting that the NCTA and the liaison group members have already agreed with this change. The other work group we've reviewed is the CTP work group. There's been a couple of different iterations and versions of this work group. The current iteration's primary tasks are up on the screen. There were amendment guidelines for CTP roadway projects and then for our other modes, as well as enhancing the CTP section of the public involvement plan and looking at recommendations that came out of a 2019 white paper. The CTP work group has been paused until it's needed again to discuss CTP 2.0. Which we anticipate to happen following the adoption of the 2055 MTP in 2026, and the roster will be reviewed ahead of that reconvening. Now for our discretionary grants program review and updates. The Project Oversight Committee was established by the CRTPO board in September of 2015 as a subcommittee of TCC members to help make project selection recommendations to the TCC and CRTPO board, as well as to monitor the implementation of projects funded through the discretionary grants program. In 2019, the CRTPO board then adopted the Discretionary Grants Program Policy Guide, which I'll just be referring to as policy from here on out. The policy created the current process that we use now for prioritizing and programming projects funded through the discretionary grants program. It's sort of the framework that the POC has been using. And that policy has been revised twice previously in response to federal regulations, new funding availabilities, and evolving trends and regional priorities. As we reviewed both the discretionary grants program and the Project Oversight Committee, CRTPO staff started by interviewing several members of the current POC. Up here are some of the biggest takeaways we got from those interviews. So the policy has greatly improved the process since the POC's establishment. At this point, the POC doesn't really provide any input regarding the scoring of projects. Everyone told us that they would welcome regular project updates. They feel like they would foster more conversations, cooperation, and awareness across jurisdictions. And finally, the spring shortfall call was sort of universally identified as a challenge and burden for staff. We also then reconvened this group as a focus group to review the recommendations before any presentations began. We also looked at a couple of our peer MPOs in North Carolina. Campo up in Raleigh has what they call the Locally Administered Projects Program, or LAP. LAP has a steering committee which meets once annually in April or May to develop their recommended target modal mix and to develop recommendations for improvements to the LAP program. They also have secondarily a LAP selection panel, which is made up of MPO staff and professional staff from non-applicant agencies. This group meets twice annually to develop the recommended project list in November or December, and then to recommend the reprogramming of unobligated funds in June. The Durham Chapel Hill Carborough MPO, or DCHC, has a program they call Regional Flexible Funding. This funding is guided by their federal funding policy, in which the MPO staff up there scores their new projects, and then they also prepare a list of recommended projects based on those scores. So that is done all internally up in DCHC. Once the list is finalized, their member agencies then present their recommended projects to their MPO board. And they have in their policy that it is reviewed and updated each time a new MTP is adopted. So I'm coming here today with 4 recommendations driven by strategic plan review. So we really looked for opportunities for process improvements, for organizational efficiency improvements, and we did an evaluation of the project oversight committee. I want to stress that all of these recommendations are to go into effect for 2025 and will have no impact on the currently open 2024 fall call process. These recommendations were presented to the Project Oversight Committee on August 8th, as well as to transportation staff on August 28th, and there were no objections or concerns there. It was also brought to TCC earlier this month. Recommendation 1 is a project oversight process improvement in which project managers representing each of our member jurisdictions will conduct annual presentations on their active discretionary grant program projects during CRTPO transportation staff meetings. CRTPO has already developed a PowerPoint template that we will provide. Each jurisdiction with at least one active project will be required to do their annual presentation or be ineligible for the ensuing call for projects. We think that having these presentations will increase communication among jurisdiction staff about current and ongoing projects as a follow-up to the feedback we heard from POC. And we hope that this will help improve our members' understanding of regional planning projects and issues. This is our proposed schedule for the presentations. And going forward, each jurisdiction's month would not change. So for example, Davidson and Troutman would always present in June. That wouldn't change from one year to the next. For our transportation staff meetings, those are virtual Zoom meetings hosted by CRTPO, held every Wednesday at 2:00 p.m., or at least scheduled for every Wednesday at 2:00 p.m. If we don't have an agenda for that week, then we cancel the meeting. These presentations should be given by project manager or a knowledgeable jurisdiction representative of the lead applicant. Obviously, we understand that NCDOT is a vital partner on a lot of these projects, and we understand if you need to team with them for this presentation. The PowerPoint slides, there will be a title, there will be a slide for a list of your projects, and then there will be 3 slides of content per project. And then that will all be followed up with a list of the recently completed projects from the last 12 months. I'm going to go through, these 3 slides are sort of sample content slides. So the first one is problem statement, solution, and project integration. These are all items that can be found within the project application for the discretionary grants program. So this is not new content. This is a restating of what your initial intent was for this project. On the second slide, we want a diagram or visual representation as appropriate, as well as bullet points for what the project's intended goals were. So realigning this intersection, installing turn lanes, very short, brief summary of what the project is doing. And then the third slide is probably the heaviest lift, as far as this isn't content you can take straight out of your application. We want to sort of identify the major milestones and the time when those were completed or when they're anticipated to be completed in the future, as well as any lessons learned. We think this is a great opportunity to bring up feedback, any pitfalls, or hey, we found a trick to make things move a little quicker. We think that's great information to be shared. Our second recommendation is a planning project application process improvement. CRTPO staff leading the Regional Transportation Planning Program will manage the planning project application and review process for the discretionary grants program moving forward. This is to ensure that projects align with the CRTPO's plans, programming, and priorities, as well as making sure everyone adheres to any relevant federal regulations as they come up. Our TPP staff will lead the pre-submittal meetings and review applications for the planning projects, but we are not recommending any changes to how those projects are evaluated or awarded at this time. The main directive for this is our TPP staff will be able to provide technical support to those member jurisdictions, as well as encouraging integration and implementation of recommendations that come from CRTPO plans. Recommendation 3 is a discretionary grants program efficiency improvement. Beginning next year, we recommend eliminating the spring shortfall call for projects and moving forward with a single annual call for both new projects and shortfall projects during the fall. The name that we've come up with is the annual discretionary grants call. I know it's very creative. And I do want to note that the current fall call process does already allow for shortfall project applications. We feel that a complete pool of applications will help improve the assignment of funds to modes and project phases, as well as reduce administrative burden for our members and our partner organizations associated specifically with the spring call. Our fourth and final recommendation is that the CRTPO board should dissolve the project oversight committee. The policy has simply created a process that no longer requires a dedicated TCC subcommittee to administer. Transportation staff meetings and TCC will serve as forums for discussion for the discretionary grants program moving forward. The discretionary grants program recommended project list, which is what this board ultimately votes on, will be developed in TCC work sessions, which I'll go over in a second. And the TCC vice chair will continue to lead the TCC through the process like they do for the POC currently. And I want to reiterate, this recommendation is to go into effect after the development of the recommended project list for the 2024 fall call. So these TCC work sessions will be scheduled for the same days as the regular December and January TCC meetings for 11:30 to 1:30, or to start 20 minutes after the TCC meeting ends. If TCC is canceled, then we would start at the normal TCC meeting starting time. And the January work session is only if needed. If we get it all done during the December work session, then we don't need the January work session. As I mentioned, the process will be led by the TCC vice chair in accordance with the policy. CRTPO staff will be present and available for support, and we will provide a packet of relevant information for all attendees. These work sessions will be open to all TCC members who will be invited and encouraged to attend. This is the schedule and new process for the annual discretionary grants call. And this should hopefully look somewhat familiar to anyone that knows about the fall call, because the items highlighted in orange are the only things we're changing. In November, our applicants will give their presentations to transportation staff meetings instead of to the POC. In December and January, the TCC will develop the recommended project list rather than the POC developing that recommended project list. And then we are recommending that the recommended project list go to TCC and board for information and action a month later than the current process. The January meetings are often fraught with scheduling issues and a very full agenda, and staff is confident we can still get everything done and our TIP amendments sent to NCDOT on time if we push things out a month later. There will be some text updates to the discretionary grants program policy guide. We are only recommending clerical updates to match these recommendations. We are not making any other changes apart from removing mentions of the POC, identifying the TCC work sessions, removing the spring shortfall call, and updating the funding timeline / schedule. For the planning project application process, the evaluation process remains unchanged. The application will be revised slightly to reorganize it, add and edit some of the questions. And then RTPP staff will be identified as leading those pre-submittal meetings and application reviews moving forward. This is a summary of those 4 recommendations, and I'm happy to flip back to this when it's time for questions. But next steps. So obviously, I am currently doing our September next step of information presentation to this board. In October, I will be returning to request action and adoption from the board. And again, in 2025, we have those recommended updates going into effect if approved. The project status presentations will begin in January. There will be no shortfall call, and the current POC will continue to meet and follow the current fall call process until the recommended project list is adopted. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, that was a lot of information.
I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the slide.
Super.
Yep.
Questions?
Quick question. So when you meet in the fall, will there be a priority to the shortfall items as adopted by Raleigh and some of the other MOPs?
So that would be an additional edit to the policy. We are certainly open to that. That would be at the direction of the TCC and the board if that was a update and change the process that y'all would like to see.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Hearing none, we'll see you again in October, and it sounds like we'll kind of hear a condensed version of that when you're asking for action.
Absolutely.
Is that good? Okay, great. Not that this was.
I
great
know
to
it
have
was
the
a lot.
thoroughness.
Let's see.
If anybody needs an additional update before the meeting, I'm certain she'll be available. Excellent. Great job. All right, moving on to agenda item number 11, our 2024 public engagement summary. Judy, come on down.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and Board, for having me here tonight. I'm Judy Dellert, the participation and consultation planner for CRTPO. And so, yes, I'm here to give the annual update on our fiscal year 24 public engagement. And in addition to that, I also highlighted a couple things happening in FY 25. So we always start with the best thing, our team. We are a baker's dozen right now. And we take this picture each year to share with you and to include in the annual report. And so hopefully you guys all got one of these on your way in tonight. And if not, we have some extras right here on the table. And so our team has all different specialties or areas of expertise that we use to help support you and all of our member jurisdictions. And here's a quick shot of some of the events that we attended. And you can see in the circles, 64,000 was our reach this year on social media, 54,000 on our website, which I think might be our highest ever, and about 9,000 people from the community participating in different events. For our MTP, you guys know that we had a big public engagement comment period in June of this year. In that 1 month, we held 12 different events, attending various festivals and meetings, presentations in person and online. We had a great reach through social media and our webpage during that time. And I also want to say a special thank you to all of you that come out to your community events and stop by when we're at a table and say hi. And if you have any other events happening within your communities and you want us to come out and, do a pop-up table, we're happy to do that too. Here are some of the highlights that we had from this previous year. I continue to hold the quarterly communications team meetings with your member jurisdictions communications staff. If you ever have the opportunity to encourage them to attend, it's only once a quarter, 1 hour, and it's 100% remote. And it's a way for us to coordinate together, share lessons learned, find out what projects are upcoming for all of us so we can help share in that outreach effort so we can reach more people. Again, as I said, we had the increase in our social media and the CRTPO 101 presentations to our member jurisdictions. That's when we come out to talk to you and your board and help explain a little bit about what we do. And we did 14 of those last year, so that's almost like half the board. And so I just wanted to say thank you for inviting us out. And if you've had us out and want us again, we're happy to come out. Believe me, I know the work we do and the processes that we have to follow are a little complicated. And if you haven't had us out to talk to your board, if you think that would be helpful, we can do that too. And you can always reach out to me or to Neil if that's something that you're interested in. And also the education sessions for TCC and the board, between the two different groups, we held 19 education sessions last year. Some of our additional accomplishments, the discretionary grants program, you all approved over $70 million in program funds for your jurisdictions and, projects. And the $5 million raise grant that we heard about a couple months ago. The 2055 MTP, you all just approved those goals and objectives a month or two ago. We had the public comment period for that during last fiscal year. We also kicked off the Transit Providers Work Group last year. And the Scene Trail completed phase 1 of their project. For Beyond 77, you all approved the funding report that was published. And also the Title VI and limited English proficiency plans were updated. Some of our additional benefits were the board orientation that a lot of you attended, our annual joint MPO roundtable with our partners, Gaston, Cleveland, Lincoln. Also, CRTPO staff makes an effort to present at various state and national conferences where we can share what we're learning here and also learn other best practices from others. The Linking Transit and Land Use Training Series was something we did in coordination with Central Iowa Regional Council. And for that, we offered 4 sessions in this training series for all TCC members and other transportation planners and engineers. And of course, the discretionary grants program, we always have the annual webinar to help with how that program works and how to do your applications and receive funding for those. Upcoming in 2025, so we just found out about the 3.1 million that you heard about earlier from Will with the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. So we're excited to have that. We will be having another 2055 MTP public engagement period for the draft project list. That's still a few months away, but as you heard tonight, there's a lot more happening on that prior to getting those project lists done. So you'll probably hear some updates before then as well. The Title VI and LEP plan will be coming back to you next month for adoption. The public comment period on that ends this weekend. And so we'll be bringing that back to you next month. There will be more on P7.0 that Travis brings to you each month. We'll have another comment period there. Also, the Beyond 77 Coalition that was approved just last month is going to have its kickoff in November. So we're looking forward to that. And the Grants Assistant Program is going to be kicked off soon. And as Brian just presented, we continue to work on strategic plan implementation. Excuse me. So I just want to say that's, we do a lot and wanted to just, again, if there's any events happening within your communities, if you want us to come, just let us know. We can come out and set up a table. And I'm proud of all the accomplishments that we have each year. Our team is all very dedicated to the work that we do to support you, all of our jurisdictions. And I'm proud to see some of the accomplishments that we make, even though they're way into the future. I feel like we're making a difference for the future of our communities. So thank you.
Well done, Judy. Questions, comments, Mayor Hickton?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think we all know as elected officials that public engagement is difficult. So thank you for all you do. It's a great job and a lot of effort, we can tell. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Great job. Are there extras of these? If any jurisdiction wants to take some back to share with your other board members to give a summary of what happens while we're down here, right?
Right.
Yeah. Right. And thank you. Thank you. That was a fantastic quick snapshot of so much work. All right. Without further ado, we'll move on to agenda item number 12, the Waxhaw Parkway Comprehensive Transportation Plan Amendments presentation by, I think, Matt Hubert. So you got a couple of folks here. So this presentation is an informational only. There's not an ask for any action this evening. So with that, Mr. Hubert?
Yes, thank you. Really hope that being so late in the agenda, everybody will be tired and not want to engage, but here we are. Again, my name is Matt Hubert. I'm the Assistant Town Manager for Waxhaw and the Engineering Director. I have with me James is our engineer for traffic and transportation to present the technical side and update of the context for this amendment. So we had previously brought the all the technical data supporting this amendment to TCC, and at that point, there were no technical concerns brought forward. So again, now it's our turn, and I don't intend to take up too much time. I'll start with kind of the recent history of the project itself and the new amendment, and it'll take about 5 minutes, and then we can engage in any questions. So this is the current status of the alignment. As you can see, highlighted in yellow is really what's currently on the CTP and proposed to be amended by more information that I'll bring forward. Again, this is on the CTP because Waxhaw again is a small town that's had the same kind of growth recently that everybody else is navigating. And as you see on the inset, most of our traffic goes through the railroad crossing where 16 ends and 75 continues. And so it's kind of a bit of a dead end, but so much traffic goes through there. It's an unsafe condition. Trucks get stuck on these tracks more routinely than anybody would like. And so certainly an ability to move across the tracks above grade is clearly warranted. And there's no ability to add capacity on the ground with CSX's right of way and the inability for them to really let us do anything, as well as the surrounding downtown businesses, all historic buildings. They're not going anywhere. We simply can't add capacity on the ground. And so regionally, we're seeing traffic volumes going north-south on 16 of about 15,500 cars a day already. Going on the western approach of 75, we're seeing 11,000 cars a day. And on the eastern approach to 75, we're seeing 16,000 cars a day. And these are 2-lane roads. The tracks go up and down. Cars do not, it's not even a normal intersection. You have to slow down to go over the tracks, and then you have to slow down to make your turns. It's not efficient by any means. So again, this alignment that's currently on the map has been there since 2017. So the background to the amendment is that, in 2018, we did public engagement. And that showed that there was kind of something to continue to look forward as is this alignment really in the best interest of the region. So based on that feedback, NCDOT conducted a feasibility study in 2022 and brought that forward. And the result of that study was a new alignment was identified. It identified that there were a potential new corridor that provided less environmental, property, and cost impacts. Coming off of that amendment or that study, the town received a planning grant from CRTPO for an origin destination study in 2023. And that also helped reinforce kind of the need for this bypass, if you will, because we found out that almost 68% of the traffic going through downtown wasn't there to just get downtown. They were going through there from somewhere else, essentially commuter traffic. And that's not just Waxhaw traffic. That's the greater Union County, even Lancaster region. You used to be able to come down 521 pretty quick, and you could cut across on 75, and that was a good quick route. Seeing what's happened on 521, it's no longer an option in terms of travel time. So again, we know it's something that has to happen, not just for Waxhaw, but for everyone in that region. So then Union County requested the CTP amendment specifically to follow the CRTPO's process and open public engagement on this amendment, this feasibility alignment that DOT brought forward. we completed that, and a majority of public support of the new alignment was received. I think in your handouts, you have all the necessary background that came with this. Subsequent to that, the town has its own master transportation plan. We initiated it in 2020 and we updated it this year in 2024. As a part of that, we did our own public engagement. The Parkway East was the highest scoring project in that prioritization list from the public. We also know that NCDOT is supportive of the Parkway, and in P7 draft at least is likely going to award all their local points to this. And ultimately, again, we're really just picking between the current alignment and a proposed feasibility alignment. And so whichever one is selected at this point, we would want to move forward in the 2055 MTP to continue to get this programmed and on the books. So we're closer to construction, knowing, you know, we're still 20 years off and following the STIP process. There's a lot of runway ahead of us for any other changes along the way. So specifically, when we talk about what is that alignment, again, we know there's a choke point at 16 and 75, and specifically the new amendment identified in the purple is the northeast segment of that quadrant. That's what DOT brought forward in their feasibility analysis, and it's closer to Waxhaw. It's actually closer to where the trips want to go, because we found in that 68% of total regional trips, a lot of them want to continue south. They aren't necessarily going to Monroe, which I think was the prevalent assumption. We're also bringing forward the green amendment that further lines up with the purple feasibility study, continues that southern direction for that traffic, and eliminates a Z movement from, say, a purple back to the orange. And the orange, again, is the original current CTP alignment. So here is just kind of to bring forward what the feasibility amendment identified is. If you look at the red dashed line, those were the number of parcels in the regional jurisdictions that are impacted by the original CTP alignment. And in the feasibility study, that gets reduced greatly to just 3, 1 in the county and 2 in Mineral Springs. South of 75, town of Waxhaw already owns that parcel, and the southern amendment altogether is within Waxhaw's jurisdiction. So again, it's really, the data and the numbers really suggest that the feasibility alignment is a better choice between the two, and that's why we're bringing this forward and hope for a conclusion of this amendment. And with that, open it up to questions.
Okay. So we'll open it up for questions. Yes, sir.
You said that the realignment had majority favorability, and how did you come to that conclusion?
Just percentage base. I think it was over, I think, and I'll let James bring the numbers. He's our numbers guy.
Sure. So great question. So the first public engagement was initiated by Union County. That is percentage-based, majority public support. And that is a full memo summarized within your agenda packet this evening. As an additional step following the standard CRTPO public involvement plan process, Waxhaw additionally conducted further public engagement as a part of this master transportation plan and found overwhelming support for the project. We had approximately 685 responses to the master transportation plan and 409 responses to the original Union County initiated public comment.
I have a question. Ernestine, yes.
Based on the numbers that you gave, was most of the support within the land that will be affected? Did a lot of those people give a positive support or negative? Because a lot of times, a lot of people will give support. They're not even affected by what's going on. But the ones that are truly being affected, were they even questioned?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by being affected, right?
I mean, being affected is people's property, people's land.
Thank you for that.
The majority of the people that sometimes answer these questions don't have any, I mean, it's not their land.
Right.
It's just something that they want to see happen. But when it affects someone's own personal land, how much support did you get from them?
Right, and I think it's very natural for the people most affected in terms of property to not be supportive, right? And then when we talk about planning for safety and for regional purposes, that if that's a higher consideration, that's not for me to judge, right? But I can say that there's a lot of support for this in the people who are going through that intersection because they'd rather not be there. And certainly they would rather not get stuck on the tracks if a train's coming and they got nowhere to go. And so, I mean, again, this is really just a choice between A and B in terms of what's on the map. The new roadway alignments are controversial. I don't have a solution for that. There was a Monroe bypass, right? It does basically, to a larger degree, what this is anticipated to do. People who don't need to be there, go around it. People who want to be there, get there easily. That's essentially, from a technical side, what I'm speaking to. As far as the merits of what's going to happen to somebody's property, the state has eminent domain for a reason.
Good. Renee?
I think what I heard Ernestine asking was what if there was context given when the question was asked?
Yes, so to clarify the question, are you referring to the actual alignment locations?
I see two questions on here, and one says, the proposed new route is an improvement, or do you want the parkway built? And I think knowing what we've done, what we've talked about recently in Matthews, when you talk about farmland and farmland preservation, there's a high support of that people probably move to Waxhaw to be around open space and to appreciate the open space that private landowners are keeping for them. When the question was asked, was that part of the consideration? Were they realizing that this would split up large acres of beautiful open space and where they see horses every day? Or was it just a question of, is this more convenient for you?
So great question. So to help answer that question, there were several trends that came out of the data from those who indicated that they were directly impacted. So if we're defining directly impacted by the actual parcels, there's really only 3 parcels that are directly impacted within this multi-jurisdictional area. Everything else is Waxhaw's jurisdiction. To directly answer your question though, as far as are we looking at those types of impacts? Yes, we are. So there were comments specifically to farmland and equestrian type uses as well. A lot of the confusion that we found within the comments provided were that people thought that they were being impacted, like for example, McNeely Equestrian Farms, other farms around the area. And it turned out that no, that we're in an entirely different area than those particular comments.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Yeah, that's okay.
It's coming through our neighborhood.
Right. Thank you, sir.
No one up there has come spoken with us.
Great. Thank you.
And ultimately,
yeah.
There is, and I appreciate your questions over here.
Right.
Thank
Excuse
you.
me, sir.
But what I'm hearing you say is that the questions were too cloudy then. If people were thinking that the location of the road was in another it was in another area, then they were answering.
So to help provide further clarification on that question, Waxhaw and Union County and Town of Mineral Springs hosted an in-person public engagement session where we had over 50 plus attendees at that public engagement session where people were like, well, where exactly is this line going? So, and we had full-size maps for them to see clearly where that line is being proposed and where the current line exists today. So to help clarify that muddiness in the water, so to speak, we did provide multiple opportunities for people to engage at those types of events, in-person events, online opportunities. We went to individual board meetings to help engagement. We had posters, everything at various town events to help eliminate that confusion.
Right. And the intent was to meet the CRTPO's public engagement policy. We worked with the CRTPO, we worked with the Union County in drafting these questions. We used the software that the CRTPO uses, and it's got its limits. So again, the desire is not to be obtuse about how we're asking the questions. The desire, well, I don't want to waste any time doing something that nobody wants, right? We've got plenty of work to do, and we only have a limited amount of funds. That's not really what's being presented here. And the other side of it is, this is just the first line on the map, right? There's no environmental process has been done. We don't really know where this is going to go for some time, but we do want to spend the money and have it programmed so we can find that information out and continue to have these conversations, because we are still a long way off from this being any kind of reality. And when we talk about kind of the earlier things that were mentioned in strategic planning, look, maybe by this time, there are flying cars there. There's not enough traffic. We're just calling our ride. We don't even have our own cars. That would be outstanding. I don't want to have to do this, but lacking any other alternative, this is the process that we have to bring a road that does the improvements that the town and the region knows it needs.
Right. If we can entertain some other questions. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions and some comments. Matt, thank you for the presentation. But I want to clarify something that you said. So I believe very early in your presentation, you said that there were no technical concerns at the TCC, correct? But there were objections, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that there were going to be 31 properties within Union County that would be affected under the proposed amendment. Did I hear that correctly?
No, it's one property that would be impacted within Union County.
I believe what you said was 1 or 2 in Mineral Springs, but there were significant more in Union County.
Well, the prior alignment, the current alignment shows more. And so what we have here is still showing 1 unincorporated and then 2 in Mineral Springs.
Okay. Well, just some comments for the board, just for some backstory and clarification. Within our packet this evening, you guys probably saw that there were several letters there of recommendation for the Parkway. One thing that you didn't see was a letter from Union County and Mineral Springs. And it's because there's no agreement between Union County and Mineral Springs, as well as Waxhaw, the 3 municipalities, on this particular project. You know, we've looked at this project. Our board's looked at this project for quite some time. You know, our board met to discuss this project. We actually had the Waxhaw folks come in and do a presentation. What I'll say is that the feelings for our board, Union County Board of Commissioners, was that, number one, this isn't really a parkway. This is a 2-lane road. And it was the opinion of our board, after hearing this information and sort of digesting this, that, well, it's more of a traffic facilitator than it is a traffic decongester. Because what you're going to see, and our fear is what we're going to see is, if something like this is adopted and created, then it's going to give room for more residential growth along that parkway. You know, it was also a concern of our board that the main purpose behind this parkway and the different variations of the alignments were to facilitate mega developments such as Polo Grounds. Polo Grounds was estimated to bring 5,000 to 6,000 new homes. The estimated build out for something like that is about the same time as what it's going to take for us to build the parkway. And I don't believe that that's a coincidence. Now we're talking about a different development. Now we're talking about Yarborough. Now we're talking about apartments. But you're still talking about residential development. And at the heart of this entire project, there's residential development. For 30 years, you know, there's been some discussion about this. And there's a reason why we haven't been able to get it correct in 30 years. Our board voted to essentially remove it entirely. We want to go back to the drawing board altogether and scrap the entire idea. The reason why we haven't got a solution in 30 years, well, I mean, it's pretty much residential development within the area. It seems like there's annexation and, you know, development that always gets in the way of these alignments. And, you know, it's been the feeling of our board as well as myself that whether it's 1 property that's affected or 100 properties that are affected or 331 properties that are affected, we don't want to trade 1 existing resident nor their property for any kind of future residential growth.
Thank you.
Okay, and
Thank you.
okay, and so if I could respond.
Sure.
Okay, so again, yeah, we didn't put in your resolutions because they really weren't pertinent to the amendment. The amendment is you pick alignment in blue or pick the alignment in red. There's all the time in the world, really, to come forward with your own amendment, to bring alternatives, to come to the table and have discussions on the future planning of what's going on. So this does not preclude that by any means. When we talk about the polo grounds, that was never an official application. So I can't do anything about it because in technical terms, it doesn't exist to me. In 30 years, it just hasn't been ready. It's been on the scoring, but it hasn't had enough reason to score highly. Now it has enough reason to score highly because of all the traffic that, again, it's not just Waxhaw that's growing, it's everywhere else around us. And so to kind of put us in a hole and say we're the ones causing this, everybody else knows exactly what's going on. The market is driving this. Housing is driving the market. That market could change tomorrow. It could change in 2 years. It could change in 5 years. What's going down there? It could be a solar farm. It could be a wind farm. It could be Amazon distribution. That is still open for something else, but this is the amendment about what do we do with the traffic that's here now and is only going to get worse, and the safety issues that are here now. We did an emergency management project. We did a training with Union County Emergency Management, and they used the scenario of a train derailment downtown. Completely realistic. And what that means is all of downtown is shut down and you have nowhere else to go, period, besides what are the loss of life and really the loss of that downtown, period. So to kind of speak from fear about what it's going to create versus what it's trying to solve, I can provide information all day long about what are the merits of this. But if we're trying to fight this beast that the state hasn't given us, we don't have impact fees, right? We've got our hand tied behind our backs sometimes, and we're all in this boat together. So we're looking for the same kind of support that we would provide if someone else was in this position.
Great. Other questions, comments?
I'd like to respond to a couple of points,
Sure.
Madam Chair. So as far as Polo Grounds is concerned, I understand that you don't have an active project, but I do understand that there is clear cutting of that property. So, and I'd like to correct one other thing that you said as far as the resolution. You know, the point that I'm trying to make here is that you're not going to find a resolution from Union County because we oppose the project. And we oppose it, we oppose it on principle, more so than anything. And so, you know, this is well documented between my board, the board that I sit on, as well as the town of Waxhaw, you know, the differences that we have here. I think that what we should consider doing is going back to the drawing board with this thing until there's consensus on the affected municipalities. I think it's actually irresponsible that we're sitting here talking about it when there's no consensus between 3 different municipalities on this. Thank you.
Right. And so again, wait,
Mr. Tilley, go ahead.
I moved to Union County about 32 years ago. In the first 13 years I was in Union County, I lived in Waxhaw. And all this major growth that's going on in Waxhaw has happened since that time. When I first moved to Waxhaw, there was one stoplight after 10 o'clock at night between Monroe and Waxhaw. The same intersection at 16 is the same intersection that was there 32 years ago. Your traffic issue is self-inflicted by allowing all the gigantic growth you've allowed around your town. And you didn't fix the infrastructure or even try to before you allowed the growth. And it's affected the other municipalities and the county by the schools and everything else. And I mean, it's really a sin what you've done to the taxpayers of Union County.
Well, again, that's a perspective because we're all stuck with the funding issues that NCDOT has. They were going to widen 16 long. That should be going on right now. It's not going on. We know we need to have another means to facilitate the kind of infrastructure because the town is not able to widen 16 and it's not the town's only development that has created the reason to widen the 16. This doesn't stay within municipal boundaries like it was mentioned before. When we talk about clear cutting on polo grounds, that property owner is allowed to do that. right? They have the right to use the property. And so these property owners, if they wanted it to keep it green, they have the right to keep it green. They're not doing it. Right. And so to look at Waxhaw and say, oh, we're causing all of this, we're just following the rules that are given to us and really trying to do some smart growth things. Our TIA is very, very aggressive, and it has brought more improvements in recent times than without it. And so again, we're partnering with the development community, with our needs, and with NCDOT to try and solve these problems as quickly as we can and get out ahead of them. But the funding model is not there. The gas tax is not getting it done, and we don't have support from the state to charge impact fees. Again, I'm all about solving these problems. I'm sitting down. When I came to Mineral Springs, when I came to the county, I asked to talk. That's all I asked for. And what I got back was that I'm part of the problem, and I'm not part of the problem. I'm a professional. I have a duty to the state as a professional engineer, and I'm here to solve safety and congestion issues, and I'm here to do it in a collaborative way. I can talk about this all day long, and I can meet you somewhere, but you have to give me somewhere to meet. To say, oh, we're just bad and we just don't want to talk about this at all, that doesn't give us any room. We have an amendment that the county brought forward, and we're going to finish it one way or the other. Pick the blue or pick the red, and then we can come back to the table if you want to come back. We will happily do that.
So, Mr. Hubert, we appreciate that dissertation. Mayor Becker, you have some comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments. Let me just hand out a few pieces of paper here. And because it's getting late and we've talked about it for a long time, I think I'd ask you to flip the last page of that little handout, which is the CTP from the CRTPO website. And I've added a few notations to it because I think there's some other factors that haven't been addressed in Waxhaw's presentation, which are really, really important. So first, I'll start with a few comments that Mineral Springs believes that neither parkway route is desirable or necessary. And it's not desirable because of the effect on an extremely unique neighborhood. It's not just a few houses. It's not just expensive houses or comfortable houses. It's an intact community that's devoted to conservation, livestock rescue, endangered species, habitat preservation. So it's a very unique community, and and it's all in Mineral Springs. So we certainly look at the importance of that, and we do see that looking at that map that on the last page of what I've handed out to you, the northeast and southeast tends to go through a very large area of undeveloped property. And so when that road goes in, that all becomes developed. There's probably 5,000-6,000 acres in there that'll have a direct connection to Charlotte on a brand new road. And so we think that's very important to the developers. And we see that this route has gone back and forth. It was just moved to this location, the 1 through 14 location in 2017 with no fanfare. Nobody knew it was being moved. It was a different process for CTP amendment back then. So nobody knew it happened until suddenly people who lived there said, wait a minute, this thing just got moved to come through my house. And that created a lot of controversy here in 2018. And unfortunately, it didn't get resolved. It just said, we're leaving it there. It's not moving. It's going to be on 1 through 14. What happened was one doesn't count, but 2, 3, and the ones that look like they're not affected, but they are because they're cut off. Those weren't lots. There was a route for the parkway that was there since like the late 90s. Those people then said, they're not moving it. We can build here. So they built there in good faith when they were told it's staying up there on the eastern side. So these people have been yo-yoed back and forth. It's been whack-a-mole. It's been really, really very unfair to that neighborhood and to the town of Mineral Springs. So let me skip ahead and let's look at some really important things about public safety, because I support the Waxhaw staff and the Waxhaw mayor, everybody in this room, for public safety considerations. And it's an absolute fact that rail track in Waxhaw gets trucks high-centered. So that's a problem. It's hard to turn in those historic buildings, very close quarters. But the important thing is, and it has not been mentioned, it doesn't get mentioned to the public very often either. We just approved in the consent agenda
a tip amendment. Now, the tip amendment was stretching it out one more year, but it's for P 5748B. If you look at the map that I've put in front of you and you see the dot at the very top center that says fire department, that's where the Waxhaw Fire Department is. The red line that says existing is the Waxhaw Parkway heading west as it exists now. That's about 50% of the route. That dark blue one that crosses Highway 75 and crosses the railroad tracks is P 5748B, a TIP project that's programmed, funded, and in right-of-way acquisition, scheduled for completion by fiscal year 29, with an overpass over the tracks and an overpass over 75. And the yellow one is a very, very short missing link, which I believe, and I've encouraged, my board encouraged Waxhaw's staff to apply for a DA grant to close that little yellow gap, to complete that leg. And that we would support them. We would adopt a resolution encouraging the CRTPO to approve that discretionary grant, so that by 2029, we can have the Waxhaw Parkway going from the same point on Highway 16, crossing the railroad tracks right near the fire department, and creating great public safety improvements. No truck would ever have to go across the railroad tracks on Highway 16 or turn off of Highway 16 when that road's built. And the other thing that road accomplishes is, if you see the dotted red and blue line, which is on the CTP, we call it Parkway Southwest. I've circled it in blue, saying that needs to be prioritized because Mr. Hubert and Mr. Kelly have said, if you look from where it says fire department and go northwest to southeast, that is the route into South Carolina that people are taking. Yeah, we'd like to get people around there. Well, is it really any different to go west and loop around and come back, or to go east and come around and loop back? It gets you in the same place. The difference is that west is under construction right now. It's also in an area where really not a whole lot of new development is taking place. It solves a transportation problem instead of adding to a development facilitator. So
Source
that's
of
the
information, if I
and then
may,
the
Madam
green
Chair.
ones, interestingly enough, on the right, those are developer commitments for a project called Yarborough Farm, which is in the approval process in Waxhaw. Unfortunately, it's about 550 houses and apartments, and then a companion piece called Rogers Pond is another 100, 200 units. That's the downside. The upside is, yeah, they've agreed to provide those green roads. So those are going to go back up to 75. So with that blue circled route is the only missing link to get the traffic safely around downtown Waxhaw and either back to 75 or back down to South Carolina. So we feel that really there's a much better way. It's to facilitate what's under construction now. We worked really hard. Only a few people were here in 2018. But we objected to the Waxhaw Parkway movement, and also CSX and NC Rail Division wanted to do a rail siding in that area, in the area of that neighborhood. And I give a lot of credit to Waxhaw Mayor Maher, and he's not here, I don't think, but Union County Planning Director Bjorn Hansen the three of us worked together with the NC DOT Rail Division and South Carolina DOT and got that project, that Helms Road overpass, programmed as a rail project, which puts it into a fast track bucket of money, which is why it's going to be open in 5 years. And so I take a lot of pride in being part of making that happen, because that was an agreement that Mayor Maher and I came up with. Well, if we're not going to work on that eastern loop, let's see if we can get that west facilitated. And we have. And I really would love to get my fellow elected officials and the staff in Waxhaw to look at, let's just focus over there, solve the problems. Don't create a new transportation hub to send more new development east and south of Waxhaw, between Waxhaw and Mineral Springs. We're trying to avoid that. And that's all I have to say about that. I just wanted to give you a little background on that if we get that missing link built, which could be done within 5 years, it would be a much easier, less expensive way. Right now, if you look at the TIP amendment that we just approved tonight in the consent agenda, the estimated cost for just the northeast quadrant of the Waxhaw Parkway, because of a 60-foot high grade separation. It's an incredibly difficult technical problem. It's a really expensive road to build. It's $85,400,000 for 1.7 miles. It's not good bang for the buck. I think we can find better ways of accomplishing the public safety and the congestion mitigation goals of.
So I have
what New Jersey
counterpoints to
wants
all of
do.
this, but I don't think that this is really the forum.
Excuse me, sir. He was not, Mayor Becker, are you
Yeah.
finished?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Matt. I'm done. That's my take. And so the bottom line is, do we really even need to vote to change the alignment? Because my take is, Mineral Springs has adopted a resolution, and two of them are there. We don't feel that it's appropriate for our board. Our board says, why would we want to vote to go from a bad project to another bad project? I mean, that's my board's position. We need to do something different. So the urgency of approving one or the other of these right now for a project that may be 20 years out, maybe we should focus on the project that's 5 years out. And let's think about whether we need this project that's 20 years out. So that's my take on that. That's why it's being discussed here, Matt. So thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm done. And I'll turn it back over to Madam Chair and to
Thank you.
Mr. Hubert.
Mr. Bell?
I just want to say that Weddington stands in agreement with what Commissioner Helm said earlier. And I like what Mayor Becker just said, a lot of what he said. We are so negatively affected in Weddington because of all the growth that's coming out of Waxhaw. 16 can't handle any more traffic. And I know it's scheduled to be widened, but that's down the road. And we feel in Weddington that having say this bypass, it would spur more potential growth, adding to the problem with all the other developments that we've heard that our developers are, trying to do in that area. And so if that is done, then we feel that we just can't handle the growth that's coming through our town. And so it's really, even now, it's negatively affecting us. So I think there's got to be a better way, just like what Mayor Becker just said, and what Commissioner Helm said. So we stand in agreement that there is a problem with traffic now, and I think this would add to that problem.
Any other comments, Mayor Higgins?
I just have a question either for the chair or for staff. If we don't vote to adopt this, does it revert to the current other one? Is that what would happen?
It stays
Just stays
in the
where it
current
is.
alignment as it is.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And to your question, the better way is to bring a different amendment with its prerequisite public engagement to verify the point. I mean, again, I'm not trying to force anything on anybody. I'm simply following the process that's been given for us. And again, I have very good information for all of your points. I don't know if anybody really wants to go through all of this, but I'm happy to do so.
So, Mr. Hubert, if you would allow me and the board, obviously we've heard a lot of comments and a lot of information. Our current MOU stipulates that if it's a project, that it's a non-numbered road, that, we need all of the affected jurisdictions to speak as one and be in agreement. And if not, you're kind of putting it on the rest of us board members to approve or deny something by the majority. So 3/4 of a vote.
Correct.
We all have strong opinions about road projects, and it's very helpful to have everybody in alignment. So my suggestion is, as this was as FYI only and information, you were going to ask for a vote next month. My suggestion is that you all come together. I know that based on the notes that Mary Becker has, that you had a consultant, Dewberry, back in 2021. Perhaps you all come together, share the cost of a consultant, and look at this for a different alignment that would be, nobody's going to be 100% in love with anything, but something that you can all get on the same page for.
Sure, and
to
I
bring back to
appreciate
us.
that. I mean, DOT, Town Engineering, Kimley Horn, Kittleson, RSNH have all been consulted on these matters, and they all have followed with the MRM to show what the expectations are and what this will do. Again, I didn't really get any feedback that they were willing to come and have a discussion. So if that's on the table, if we think there's something that can actually be done to get consensus, absolutely. That's been my request for many months now. That not being the case, this is still an item before, and if it's a three-quarter vote, so be it, right? We're following CRTPO's process, and that's what's before us, and we don't intend to do anything but that.
I'm hearing you correct, that you do intend to bring this back, and would like for us to vote on this next
At some
month?
point, it will be required, and it sounds like the mayor wants to speak.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're staying focused on the scope of this discussion and the scope of this decision. This decision adjusts the alignment from something that impacted over a dozen properties to something that affects far fewer properties. And the decision is, do we like the old alignment that's longer, impacting more homeowners, or the shorter alignment that hopefully will be more cost effective in the long run? It's just an A or a B. And then the main thing to keep in mind is that this doesn't end communication about the final location of where the bulldozers and the asphalt will be. This just continues the process and keeps us moving forward, keeps it on the CTP, and we can continue to have discussions. Because I think one thing folks need to understand is that just because we amended this once does not mean it cannot be amended again. And I think we should continue to have those discussions if that's what's needed. So we're not trying to close the door and set this in stone and never to discuss it again. So
Right.
keep that in mind, please.
Mayor Becker?
Thank you, Mayor Murray. No, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a final thought on that matter. I understand Mayor Murray's point, and Mayor Higdon actually sort of made that pretty clear too, that doing nothing leaves it where it is, and it affects a number of people in that neighborhood, and it allows a lot of development. It's not going to even consider being built for 20 years. It's nowhere near the STIP. It never makes the it never makes the cut on the prioritization process, at least not these days. So our board's take is it just doesn't seem right to just amend something to go from something that no one likes to something else that no one likes. I mean, let's just interrupt that process and let's go back and just put a pause on a vote entirely and leave it where it is if need be. But voting for a new one makes it a little bit more like we've made a decision, and that sort of gives credibility to the project and to the new alignment. And my board doesn't want to give that new alignment any credibility. We want to go back to focusing on other areas of the region where that railroad crossing is actually being built now and where it could probably serve more people. So that's my only concern, and I appreciate Mayor Murray's clarification of that, because it's very true. But our wish would be that it just, what's the urgency to have it settled right now? Maybe I'd like to see a new CTP amendment come forward, which may eliminate some of these redundant loops. The CTP has all these loops on it already. There's too many. They go way down in the south into the unincorporated county. Why do we have so many? Maybe we need to clarify that CTP and clean the whole thing up before we start looking at individual alignments again. So that's my take. So thank you again, both.
Any other questions about this specific project? Councilmember Driggs?
So, given the 3/4 thing, I'm in a bit of a hot seat here. Right? I mean, and I agree with the chair. I would find it very difficult to get in a crossfire among the parties. And therefore, I hope that you can talk further and resolve this. I'll inform myself a little more as well. But as it stands right now, what you've brought to us, frankly, from where I sit, is kind of hard to resolve. And I don't have enough local knowledge at that location. I hear both parties and find it just difficult to decide where I would come down. But I think you recognize, given the way our voting structure works, that there's a burden on me in this one. I want to do what the majority of my colleagues here would support. And if it comes to that, I'll explain a position that I may take and try to make sure that we have a pretty good alignment around it. But really bringing this to us this way is tough. And I'll just mention a parallel here. We got into a dispute about the Charlotte airport, and we went to the FAA, and they said, guys, we're not going to look at this until you figure it out. So I guess, Madam Chair, I'll keep in touch with you and we'll see how this unfolds. But it'd be very difficult for me if it comes back the way it appears tonight, to make a decision or to commit to proceed. I'll put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one last question. Where was the original alignment before it was changed not long ago? What's up there now?
I can
What's
answer.
that?
It was very close to where it's coming to now. Interestingly enough, it's the alignment that we were asking for in 2018, in which Waxhaw and at the time Union County had different representatives. They rebuffed us on it and they wouldn't talk to us about it. They said, no, we're moving it east and it's staying there. We tried to move it back then when nobody had, they hadn't even subdivided those lots on the west side. It would have been good then, but now that ship has sailed. But yeah, it's ironic that the new proposed alignment is very close to where we actually wanted it 6 years ago.
Okay, right.
There's just nothing factual enough on the record for me to bring forward to speak to that kind of the past of it. That's why it really, what here is what's effective
Okay.
in terms of what we can consider. Again, and the priority is we want to get this on the P7. We want to see how it does score because we waited in line and we, it's not our fault that it's cost a lot of money. COVID changed everything. All of these projects cost money, but we don't want to miss out on what our region is due. And further have a chance at the MTP.
Great, thank you. And as I said, I would certainly encourage all of the parties to have some further discussions to, if you don't bring this back next month for a vote.
Thank you.
Have a little bit better something to talk about. All right. No, I'm sorry. Thanks. We'll move on to the next exciting agenda item. Our side, and it's it's number 13. How much better can we get? NCDOT I-77 South Express Lanes. Thanks for everybody's patience. We're getting through it here. Brett Knipe and David Roy and Carly Swanson. We'll turn it over to you.
Sure, if things queued up. Hey guys. Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair, members of the board. Again, I'm Brett Knipe. I'm NCDOT's Division 10 engineer, and we're here tonight to continue our conversations about the I-77 South Express Lanes project. And to talk a little bit more about the comparative analysis. With me tonight is Carly Swanson and David Roy, both with North Carolina Turnpike Authority. Also in the audience, we have Patrick Norman, who's the Chief Engineer of the North Carolina Turnpike Authority. So hopefully we've got the right group up here today to help answer questions when they come up. Wanted to mention that I did provide some responses to the questions that we received last time we met. Sent that out via email yesterday. Hopefully everyone had a copy of that, along with the supplemental report that kind of explains this comparative analysis process in more detail. And hopefully that will also help answer questions that any of y'all might have. And I know it was fairly long, fairly comprehensive. So obviously you might not have had time to digest all that, but again, it's going to be something foundational that we can speak to as we move forward. Also, we did receive a request to present this information to the TCC, and we're planning to do that on October 3rd at their next meeting for information. So again, we'll recap project overview, what this project is, kind of what it means to this region, how we got here, the history of the project, and then the comparative analysis recap, which we again presented last month, those findings, and go on and talk about potential next steps with the board. So I think by now most folks know what the project is, but we'll recap it and maybe I'll try to speak to it, and from my perspective as a transportation professional, what this project is. But it's a I-5718. It is a STIP project. It's been around for a number of years now. It extends from the Brookshire Freeway on the north side of town down to the South Carolina state line. And the project is a managed lanes project. Again, that project was brought forth through, a study that was brought to this board, approved by this board, and inserted into the STIP. And Carly's going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a few minutes. But, from my perspective, I mean, this is, and really probably y'all would imagine most would agree, this is a very congested corridor, very challenged corridor. It hasn't been improved since the 1990s. And for those of us that have been around here for all that time, we've seen the kind of growth that this region has experienced, and certainly the traffic volumes on this route and other routes in our region have just dramatically increased. And it's a difficult challenge for us to try to solve, but it's also, in a sense, it could be a good problem to have, right? Growth is deemed to be a good problem by some, not by others. But either way, that's where we are. We've got a corridor that's got a very high crash rate compared to other similar corridors, 2.5 times the average crash rate of other urban interstates and freeways that are similar to this corridor. And, that a lot of that comes from congestion. I mean, the two go hand in hand. And so, Mecklenburg County within itself has a higher crash rate than anywhere else in the state. That's got everything to do with the number of vehicle miles traveled in the county. It ranks top 5 nationally as in the number of vehicle miles traveled. So, we just have a lot of transportation activity going on. And, this project's been around and been discussed since the early 2000s. It was put into the STIP in the 2013, 2014 timeframe. And here we are a decade later. And what we're talking about is the options for delivering the project. So, this isn't a new project. The concept isn't new. It's been around a long time. And I know from you guys sitting on this board, you've seen just how long it can take us to get to this point where we are today. Another feature about the project that is the cost we've got there. At $3.7 billion, it's tripled. It's tripled since the project was put into the STIP. And so, there's all these constraints that we're working around, but we're here to talk about delivery options, what our choices are for moving forward. So with that, I want to introduce Carly again. If you want to keep going. Put your slide for you.
Appreciate that. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board and others. As Brett said, I'm Carly Swanson. I'm the Director of Innovative Delivery. I work with Brett and David Roy here and others within the department to help support projects that communities have asked us to deliver. So starting off with the project history, and I will try to keep this brief because I know we're towards the end of the agenda. I know that you all have seen this slide before. I know Brett has presented it a number of times, but based on some of the questions that we've been receiving over the last several weeks, we wanted to point out some key dates to you all just to make sure everybody's on the same page with how we got to where we are today. So as Brett said, back in 2010, this board, known as MUMPO at the time, adopted a resolution supporting a fast lane study, which I'll get into more detail in just a moment. But that identified I-77 for further study of managed lanes project. So that included the north section that's open to traffic today, as well as the project that we are talking about tonight. So when you fast forward to 2014, CRTPO submitted the I-77 South Managed Lanes Project for P3.0. Per state law, toll projects in North Carolina must be approved, supported by the local planning organization. So prioritization 3.0 was when this board submitted it to move through prioritization. And as you see, there are several other points in time that got us to 2024, where we are today. As Brett noted earlier, from the time that this project was submitted to the STIP to where we are today, the total cost has tripled just in a decade. And so back in July of 2023, the department, at the request of this board, started to conduct a comparative analysis with outside advisors, taking a look at a couple of delivery options to help accelerate this project. So those two delivery options, as you all know, is the public-private partnership delivery option, as well as a traditional toll or state toll delivery of the project. Another key point we wanted to point out was when the P 7.0 scores were released in May of this year. This was a key point for us in the analysis. The I-77 South Express Lane scored as one of the top projects at the statewide tier at $600 million. And just to give some additional context on this, rising costs have limited the department's ability to be able to program new projects into the STIP. So for this project to score as one of the top projects at the statewide tier, it was substantial. And just to put it in more context for you, 600 million was in a pot that has $1 billion in it. So it was a substantial piece of the analysis that we conducted. And you heard Brett mention the fast lane study. We receive a lot of questions, why express lanes? Where did the concept of this come from? Back in 2010, this board formally adopted further study of managed lanes, and that came from this fast lane study. It started at around 2007. It was a joint effort with CRTPO, City of Charlotte, NCDOT, and South Carolina DOT. And the study looked at different corridors in this region. You can see the map here to study further analysis of managed lanes. So as you see, I-77, that's where the North project came from. We have the South project that we're talking about tonight. Additionally, we have the I-485 Express Lanes project that's currently under construction, scheduled to open next year. We also have the 74 projects, which we have different projects on that corridor in different stages of development. So we get the question frequently, why not just add more general purpose lanes? Experience has shown that adding more general purpose lanes provides short-term relief, but does not provide long-term relief or provide those reliable travel times that express lanes can offer. So as the traffic continues to grow, typically the lanes can return to the same congestion level as they were before. And so they don't provide that option for the reliable travel times that express lanes can. And I included a link here to CRTPO's website. It has additional information about the fast lane study, but it also shows some of the benefits of fast lanes. And as experience has shown in different projects across the country, express lanes can offer a long-term sustainable solution to issues such as travel demand, growing rush hour congestion, by providing those reliable travel time reliability. Additionally, as Dave Ungema a couple of months ago showed, express lanes can also generate funds, especially when you're talking about a financially constrained environment that can help with the maintenance and operations cost on the express lanes project. Dave also showed a map during his presentation that showed, it's not just here in North Carolina. Across the U.S., about a quarter of all states either have express lane projects that are open to traffic now or are under development. Next, I'm going to give a brief recap on the comparative analysis and potential next steps for the board to consider. So just to give a brief overview, at the request of this board, an analysis was conducted comparing the public-private partnership toll delivery and the traditional toll or state delivery of the project. The analysis started in July 2023, and you see on the right here, we had a team of outside advisors that supported this effort. So H&TB was the program manager for this. We had RSNH as environmental and design. Stantec provided traffic and revenue support. KPMG is a known financial advisor that works on P3 projects across the country. We also had PFM, who serves as Turnpike's financial advisor, and they have actually supported us through all of our Turnpike projects to date. So those outside advisors assisted with key analysis inputs. I had mentioned the $600 million in state funding that was allocated during P 7.0. We also received initial construction costs and traffic and revenue forecast. We were able to optimize those project costs later in the summer in July. Then we also updated our traffic and revenue findings. And as Brett mentioned, we just shared the comparative analysis supplemental report. We shared that with you all. It's also on NCDOT's website. If you search I-77 South Express Lanes, it will pull up there. So as we look at the comparative analysis, it showed that the traditional toll delivery approach is not currently financially feasible, and that's due to a couple of different reasons. So first, even with the $600 million in STIP funding, the project still has a $1.3 billion funding gap. And the escalating cost, as we had mentioned earlier, has tripled since it was originally submitted to the STIP. So the new total cost now exceeds our entire state transportation improvement program's annual budget. So that additionally, if you'll remember from our last meeting, David Roy had explained the process in terms of how the state can take a more conservative revenue assumption. It's necessary for us to meet our public debt financing requirements. So compared to a private company, we have to be more conservative with those revenue assumptions. So with the traditional toll delivery, the analysis shows that the insufficient funding could cause years of delay. And based on inflation assumptions and the current cost estimate, it's anticipated that each year of delay would add to the cost of the project at least $100 million per year. So based on these factors, with the traditional toll delivery, the preliminary engineering work would have to come to a logical stopping point, and the project would eventually need to be rescored with updated cost and revenue projections for prioritization 8.0. And the analysis showed for the P3 toll delivery that it is likely financially feasible, and there are a couple of different reasons for that. So for P3 delivery, the team adjusted revenues compared to similar peer P3s across the country. And in looking at that, it showed that the $600 million would likely cover the public contribution for the project. Additionally, private companies, developers can bring their own equity to the table, and that would help cover significant cost and reduce the need for state funds. Additionally, compared to the traditional toll delivery, private developers can also secure debt from lenders using more aggressive financial assumptions. And so those factors show that the $600 million in the STIP funding would likely cover the public contribution for the project. So if CRTPO were to request NCDOT to move forward with the P3 delivery process, the project would likely be committed in the 2026-2035 STIP. So I want to take a moment with this and really explain what the potential next steps would be. I know we've received a lot of questions, if we were to vote to move forward, what would the next steps be? Would we have any stopping points? What sort of involvement would we have? The potential next steps that I'm going to walk through really promote transparency and collaboration with the board. We have heard you all over the last year, your concerns and what your priorities are, and we would want to incorporate that into the process moving forward. We've also taken the lessons learned from I-77 North and other P3 projects around the country and incorporated it into this process as well. Something I did want to note too, we are taking the feedback that we have heard from this group and we're trying to apply it to other projects as well. You may remember that Brett had mentioned the Mid-Currituck Bridge project. That is in our Outer Banks. Last month, the local planning organization there ended up supporting a resolution to move forward with the P3 delivery process. So we are taking the lessons learned from I-77 North, our first P3, and applying it here. I also wanted to note too that state law limits the number of P3 toll projects in the state. So we are limited to 3 slots. So the first project is obviously I-77 North. The second one, if the Mid-Currituck Bridge project moves forward, would be the second one, and that leaves 1 spot for us. So for the next steps, if CRTPO were to request us to move forward with the P3 delivery process for this project, CRTPO could create a working group to partner with us to develop those key project objectives and priorities. And below here, you see a couple of sub-bullets. We took feedback, objectives, priorities from you all and incorporated it into a couple of examples. First, we would want to optimize the utilization of express lanes and the general purpose lanes. Second, we would want to encourage a competitive procurement process to receive multiple fixed price bids. Additionally, we want to increase the transparency of the business, not just where we're at here and now, but throughout the life of the project. So that includes construction, operations, and once it's open to traffic. We also want to provide benefits to transit. So NCDOT, in working with the work group, would draft those key terms, and we would share it with you all at least 60 days in advance of any public advertisement to allow time for this board to review those and act if any of the indicative terms are not acceptable to the board. And it's also important to note too that CRTPO could rescind support at any point up until NCDOT publicly advertises a request for qualifications. Now, I know I presented a lot of information to you all, so we tried to simplify it in the graphic below, just on what the potential next steps would be. So first, NCDOT and CRTPO could create a working group together. We would take the time to define those objectives and priorities that you all have. Then we would draft the key terms, provide those to you 60 days in advance to get feedback from you. And then if you all are happy with the key terms, we would advertise the RFQ. And I know Brett has mentioned this before, but I want to reiterate this message. We're not advocating for a particular path forward for this, and we all know that you know your communities and your region best. But we want to continue partnering with you, providing you that information that you may have to identify those transportation solutions that are important to you all throughout the region. Next, I'm going to turn it back over to Brett to help close out the presentation.
Thank you, Carly. So I want to recap what Carly was saying, where we could go from here, what our potential next steps are, and also frame this up with a little bit of a comparison to some other projects and even the comparisons that have been made by a lot of you all sitting out there to I-77 North. So just to be clear, again, the analysis tells us that this project is not financially feasible as a traditionally public delivered toll project. So, the direction we need from you all is to let us know the next step to take. If you're asking us to continue to pursue the traditional delivery, this analysis tells us that that's not feasible. And so we simply feel like that there's nowhere to go with that project in that direction. So we would have to bring that work that we're doing right now to a close, to a logical stopping point. The project, it could be rescored later, but as Carly mentioned, and it's on the slide again, with the inflation rates that we see today, this project increases in cost at a rate of $100 million a year. And so it's an uphill battle that we're fighting with a project of this size. The other option would be to pursue the P3 delivery. And I think what's really different about what we're talking about, how we're talking about approaching this now as compared to I-77 North. And again, it's a comparison that we've heard, time and time again in our conversations with you all outside and inside this room. What the process that we've gone through so far to date is an example of the partnership that we are seeking with you all. We don't want to try to do this alone. And, the fact is that the first project that went through the terms that we're proposing to work with you all on to include in the contract itself to be advertised with an RFQ, those terms, that process occurred after the RFQ process last time. And so we were in a position last time where it became a part of the request RFP in the later steps of the process. And so, these terms became, not as transparent. We weren't able to discuss them. And so we want to make sure that we're not taking that direction again if we move forward with your vote. But rather, we want to continue to engage, develop those terms up front with you guys, do all that prior to any advertisement. And we're thinking of those things that Carly mentioned, like, and the inclusion of transit components. I'll give you another example of another state, Georgia. I think we mentioned this last time. It may have been mentioned earlier tonight as well. Georgia and Atlanta had a project similar to this. It was their SR 400 project that was another $4 billion managed lanes project. And, one of the key components to that was the state and most likely the local municipality had a keen interest in transit components. So parking rides, for example, were included in that project. And it was another case where, and that would support BRT, in general, support transit operations in their corridor. And this isn't set in stone by any means, but, options like that could be used for North Carolina. There could be local priorities incorporated into this process is what we're trying to explain. That project in Georgia was, another huge project, as I said, $4 billion. They actually received a concession offer of $4 billion that would be returned to the state as a part of that deal. So, these things are happening all across the country in this manner because of the same challenges that we've got in the Charlotte region and its growth. It's more cars coming to the area. It's more people coming to the area. And so, contending with this, it's difficult. It's a difficult choice to make, but just want to remind you guys all again that if you choose to move forward, our commitment to you is to work with you on that process and do it iteratively and ensure that you're comfortable before we move forward. And with that, we'll take any questions.
All right, Councilmember Otley.
Thank you. Thank you. So I heard you say that the state is limited to 3 P3 slots. We have one in the north, one maybe already committed in the east. And if another P3 project comes forward and this slot is no longer available, will you bring up the slide where you said pause indefinitely? One more back. Okay, I'm not sure which one it was, but in any event. Right, project, does that mean that this would stall indefinitely if the third P3 slot is taken?
Well, potentially, yes. I mean, that's legislatively set right now that there's 3 P3 slots. And the context we're talking about pausing the project in, would be considering all of the constraints that we've been talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a couple observations. Number one, I am cognizant that in 2024, there are apparently many more providers other than Centra. Back when we did this last time, not we, but our predecessors, there was only Centra apparently. And so I'm happy that this board could be in a different position with a real opportunity for competition, which would only serve our residents better. Because if we're bidding against, if there's only one provider, our leverage is 0. But if there are many providers, we are in a much better position. And so, I am certainly among those who have railed against the whole concept because I don't like it at all. But I am, also cognizant that if the option is, nothing or P3, then I want to be sure that we have as many people hearing us be reasonable, who will therefore be willing to compete because it will ultimately serve our constituents best, the more competitors we have willing to come into the process. That's number one. Number two, a very important difference between what we're contemplating now and what happened in the past is what I'm hearing from you is a commitment to develop a short list of key terms that you advertise at the outset, terms that we demand, that we must have to be comfortable. It sounds like last time that didn't happen at all. And so, if we are going to, at a certain point, lose our ability to pull out, I will feel more comfortable if we settle what those key terms would have to be on the front end, because then I know that my bare minimums would be protected. And lastly, this concession of $4 billion that this provider in Georgia offered in order to get the business is, you know, an entirely different universe than what we experienced here with I-77 North. So I'm willing to listen. I like the idea of a working group that could solidify a short list of terms that would be competitive to attract as many bidders as possible that we could all look at and perhaps, you know, co-sign on. You know, I'm interested. I think that's a good next step that would help give me comfort if, as it appears, the choice is a P3 or indefinitely stalled. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Murray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brett gets smarter every time you guys talk. Thank you very much. Couple questions. My big sticking point and apprehension is this idea that the state is limiting us to 600 billion or 600 million on a project. A couple of questions on that. Just, is that 600 million a year or 600 million a project?
So it's
For any single project, they're not giving more than 600 million, period, end of day. Thanks.
So it's again, it's written into legislation that any one project or really any one corridor between adjacent divisions. So in this case, that 600 million could impact Division 12 as well, going up into Iredell County. It's 10% of the anticipated annual revenue for the statewide tier that would be available for funding. So in any 5-year window, you couldn't exceed that corridor cap. And 600 million, it's in that range, that can fluctuate year to year depending upon anticipated revenue amounts.
Okay. Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and it kills all the other ones.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Brett, thank you for working tirelessly on this. You're in a tough position, I feel, trying to represent all sides on this so we can make a decision. Here's one of the challenges that I face representing our constituents. So we have a model, a P3 model to the north, and you've talked about it, and we've got lessons learned from it, and we plan on incorporating them in the 77 South opportunity. And I appreciate that. But I have a hard time squaring the high scoring prioritization we have for the project in the South as if it will fix or help alleviate or help reduce or help improve the flow of congestion when it hasn't done that to the north much, right? And with that being the only model that we have, and moving on from the project in the north without fixing the gaps that we've left in the north, it just doesn't leave us with a lot of confidence that the problem that we're trying to solve is going to be addressed. So, I would be interested in knowing what are the opportunities for the state to continue to prioritize, the original objectives, which I believe are the criteria of your prioritization model in the north, so we can see it work before we're asking, our constituents to accept the solution in the South.
Well, I can give you a couple of thoughts there. Well, first of all, the project to the north was just like this project. It was a managed lanes project, right? Managed lanes, as we've talked about, that Dave Ungema presentation tried to explain, Carly touched on it a minute ago. Managed lanes is a way of managing congestion. It's not a 100% congestion relief, right? It's not going to eliminate the hundreds of thousands of cars a day that we have coming on these major highways. And so it's going to provide a more reliable travel time alternative. But one thing I think is key difference between the North project and the South project is that in order to construct the project in the South, it's going to take really a full reconstruction of the interstate. Virtually every interchange and every overpass bridge would be impacted to some degree. There may be alternatives where you could elevate and avoid some impacts, but certainly not everywhere. We haven't gotten that far through our process, but you're talking about a modernization of an older interstate corridor that would also come along with this project. So in the north, you had a lot of space, you had a lot of right of way. The interchanges weren't reconstructed all the way through there. But in this case, the nature of the project itself is going to force those improvements as well. So, there is that key difference that would enhance safety. And, I know that, we've said together, I've said it and you've all said it, that we want to see better utilization of express lanes if we're going to go with this route, right? We want to optimize the use of the lanes. And so, that would be a key objective starting out as a term. I think I'd like to think we've kind of agreed that that would be a base term that we want to include, right? Optimizing the utilization of lanes, which would make for a better project in my viewpoint. And as far as pursuing other options on the north, if it were a STIP project you're speaking of or something like that, you can see how long it takes to get through that process, what it would take to ever achieve funding. But alternatively, you may have recalled that we received a brief proposal from I-77 Mobility Partners to consider widening the express lanes to 2 express lanes in the northern segment of the 77 North project. So there may be opportunities there if there's any interest to move forward with that from you guys or this board to make other improvements. But that would remain to be seen. Do you guys have anything?
Do you want to add to that? Mr.
Just
Roy?
maybe quickly and just to add on to what Brett was saying, the North Project is a 50-year partnership that we have with Mobility Partners. And over even just the first 5 years of operations, you have seen some iterative changes in that. I mean, the prime example is the introduction of the extended vehicles that allows box trucks and slightly larger vehicles into the lane that has had a positive impact on that. There was an amendment that gave the Turnpike Authority more control in the customer service operations so that customers were not having to interact with Mobility Partners, that everything was seamless, no matter if you were traveling on 77 or Monroe or Triangle Expressway, any of the facilities within the state. So there have been improvements, iterative improvements that are being made. This is we've got 40 years or so left on that contract, and it is a partnership where, as Brett indicated, there are opportunities to make improvements based on what we're seeing in the corridor. So I don't want to give the impression that everything is set in stone. There are ongoing discussions now, as Brett mentioned, about potentially making some additions in the northern section, other conversations with Mobility Partners, and those will certainly continue.
Yeah, I really do appreciate that. I just hope that, there's not the sense that when we approve or are interested in P3 partnerships, that it actually completely relieves the state of the congestion concerns in the area. We may have provided timely transportation to Charlotte from the north part of Mecklenburg County, but we have not addressed congestion issues. And I hope that that's not the understanding that we have going into 77 South. If it turns out to be a similar type of solution, we still are going to have congestion significant. And I understand what y'all are saying, that we're not going to get rid of congestion, period. I'm not expecting that, but I would expect to see improvement. And I do think there are things that could be done, and I think it'd be beneficial to see them in the north and to see that process of what it looks like to continue to work towards improving those situations in the north before we do a $3 billion project in the south. But I appreciate what y'all are saying. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Bell?
I have several, I guess, concerns and that have been really been brought up, with this board over the months. And to use the expression, I guess you've heard, it's my way or the highway. I feel like we're being held hostage to a degree. It's like either P3 or not at all. This is what you got. And I know Mayor Higgins mentioned last month. It's like, what's the price difference here? Why can't you guys manage it a little closer? I think it was what, $470-80 million difference. And I'm like, you guys are smart guys. Why can't the management be tighter and do something closer to what you're hiring an outside company to do? You've mentioned, and we've all mentioned, the mistakes of the north. And one, to me, when you have Centra come in here and say, you know, we're going to charge what the market will bear. To me, that's saying we're going to get everything out of you we can. And I know Mayor Knox has mentioned many times about the expensive tolls that he pays going back and forth. And I just don't want to see the extra burden put on people who are using, you know, we've got that now in the north. I don't want to have that in the south. You mentioned earlier a while ago about the mistakes made in the north. Could you tell me what you feel are those mistakes that won't be duplicated in the south if we went to a P3?
Well, I think what we've been talking about for the last couple of months are lessons learned. And it's this engagement that we're having right now. And it's our commitment to establish preferences of this board that would be priorities that we could work into the contract itself. So that would be our objective. I think you've really got a different opportunity in the South, as I had described, simply because, it would be more of a reconstruction of a corridor, right? So there's a lot of factors in the southern leg of I-77 from a traffic operations standpoint that would be improved because of the modernization that would take place in designs, right? Again, it's not going to eliminate congestion 100%. This is a managed lanes project, right? And the comment about being held hostage, right? We're talking about two delivery options. One that we believe isn't financially feasible, one that we believe could be financially feasible. And so those are just facts that we've derived. And it's no one's up here saying has to be this way, or has to be that way. It's a choice that really has to be made about project delivery. But the cost difference that we've talked about, remember, when NCDOT or NCTA goes about to deliver a project, we're not just out there doing that with state engineers and state construction workers. It is our industry partners on the design side and on the construction side. So no matter what, however a project's delivered, it's not just NCDOT or NCTA doing it, right? There's a contingency that has to be retained if NCDOT is going to pursue a project. A large portion, roughly 13% of the overall cost of the project is $470 million. And that's got everything to do with the risk and the contingency that we would retain in a project, right? We would have to hold that back because there's unknowns in the construction world, right? And again, as I mentioned it several times now, this would be delivered by, if it's a P3, it's delivered by one entity, it's turnkey. There's motivation to finish earlier in the construction process. There's motivation to seek ways to improve that process, that if we did a design build contract, that contractor's got a certain rate that they could construct the project and make the optimal amount of money, right? But they wouldn't be incentivized to speed things up and to find other solutions if they weren't also involved in the operations of the contract. And so it's reasons like that push that we believe the project would have that kind of cost difference, right? So it's not a lack of efficiency or anything else. It's just the fact that there is a retained risk if the department were to deliver the project.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Knox.
Yeah, so Jim, I drove in on Highway 21 today. It was free. So Brett, Carly, David, I appreciate the work that you guys have brought to the table. It's, the taste that we have in the north is kind of like you're trying to sell sludge and want us to believe that it's chocolate. So, I appreciate the candidness and the work that you guys genuinely have brought in this iteration of 77 South. I think it's different in a lot of aspects. I think I'm going to pile on a little bit with what some of my fellow board members have made. I think solicitation, as far as the numbers of vendors, is paramount. I think if you can't get more than one vendor at the table, I will never support this. There's got to be options. And I know that there's other people out there. It's a fine line for how many people actually do this work. I get that. Sadly, most of them are in Spain, but they've got the experience behind doing it. But I think that's important. I think the terms of the contract are on us. We should be able to carve this to where we get the best deal we can for the state. As Commissioner Altman said, the monies that went to state of Georgia, that bonus allocation money that came back is $4 billion is a lot of money, and that's going to have to be something that we need to look at again this time around if we're going to support this. I think the one thing that and I get reconstruction of this whole section of the corridor with the number of interchanges that we have. I think when you look at the $600 million cap, based on the construction estimated cost of this corridor right now, that's 1.7 miles is all that pays for, that $600 million cap. And I know that's legislative, and I see my state senator here who is chair of transportation, Vicky Sawyer. So welcome. And I don't know that we can do anything to change that narrative, but I think, again, I've still got a lot of questions. I don't think traffic mitigation is addressed in this. I think, I can afford to drive in the toll lanes. A lot of people can't. And I'm not saying that from an entitlement perspective. I'm saying that time is money for me. And when I'm late, I got to go and I got to pay $20 to get here. I got to pay $20 to get here. But not everybody can do that. And when you see the general purpose lanes, and Michael, you see this up our way, we've got this pinch point from exit 36 in Mooresville to exit 23 in Huntersville. And it's just gridlock. And it never changes all day long. It's same amount of cars in the toll lanes. That doesn't vary much. So I don't know what that answer is. I think this is I think when you look at the trying to average 45 miles an hour, I know when I come down in the toll lanes, I'm probably averaging more than 70 miles an hour. And yeah, I know.
His license plate number is.
So, again, we're not going to do away with congestion. We're not going to pave our way out of this thing. It doesn't matter how many general purpose lanes we ever build. It's not going to fix the problem. But I just want a more fair way of utilizing this for everybody. That's all.
Well said.
I just wanted to mention, if it's okay, our first priority that we have listed here is optimizing utilization of both the express lanes and the general purpose lanes. We've heard all of your concerns about the current section and general purpose lanes being clogged. We want you to know that we have shared those concerns with our private partner and plan to have ongoing discussions with them about that too. So it's not just this new section. We want to make sure that those lanes are being optimized too.
Mayor Hickton?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I think the fact that the corridor cap is so woefully underfunded, forcing us to go to a P3, somebody from this group or a contingent of this group needs to go to the legislature and at least make the ask to increase the amount that could be dedicated to that, because it's really punitive, because we're going to pay a lot more in tolls in this region or fees or whatever you call them on these managed lanes than we would otherwise if we built them ourselves. So this Mecklenburg County and this whole area, Iredale, we're being punished because we're being forced to use a P3, and that's not right. And I think we have to at least make the ask of the legislature and explain what the issue is, because 600 million used to be a lot of money. but it's not anymore. And we have to make the ask. I mean, they can tell us to go pound sand, but somebody should be making the ask that this is not enough. It's just not enough to fund these big projects. I feel your pain. I mean, as the price of building these facilities is through the roof, and it's just going to go up more and more, and 600 million just not going to cut it. And there's going to be another need for a project of this size probably at some point in the state. And what are we going to do? I mean, we're going to have P3s everywhere. I mean,
Great point. Other questions, comments? Councilmember Driggs?
Mayor Higdon, from my conversations in Raleigh, they're very aware of the fact that these constraints exist. I think the message is coming in from all over. They've talked about various opportunities to address that. They've diverted general fund money. I agree with you. I don't think it's enough. And I do believe the P3 is a costly alternative. So I'm with you on that. But so I wanted to say, first of all, I do appreciate, Brett, your effort and NCDOT's effort. This has been a lot of work, and you have listened to us. And I think with what you've brought back here, you've demonstrated a sensitivity to some of the things that on our minds, and recognize we are public facing, and we are working in an environment where there frankly is a lot of hostility based on the last experience. And so our decision to move ahead with this would expose us to some extent. We're going to have to respond as to why we did. At the same time, you told us you've got option A, which is impossible, and option B, which is possible. What that means is do something or do nothing, right? And we've had a situation like that in Mecklenburg County, frankly, recently. So, and I don't think do nothing is the right outcome here. If somebody thinks that they know a third possibility, we've been shown two, right? If you think you know another one, then let's hear what it is. Frankly, I don't. And I've looked at what has been done in other communities and so on. I don't think there's a silver bullet here that gets us out from between this rock and this hard place. So I think we need to take some action. The problem that we have is kind of a chicken and an egg situation. So NCDOT needs to be authorized by us to proceed, to move ahead before they do a huge amount of work to develop the RFP and all of those things. And so I interpret where we are right now as saying, okay, go ahead and do that. And then we want to look at what that looks like before you actually issue it. And that will be an opportunity for us to take up a lot of what's on our minds. And I can tell you one of my biggest concerns is this tension between revenue maximizing and utilization optimizing. What I've seen on I-77 North suggests to me that the utilization of those lanes is not in the public interest as it now stands. It's a feeling I have from having traveled there. So, and I'm attributing that to an algorithm, which is a black box that we're not allowed to know about, a pricing formula that results in underutilization with the goal of letting them make enough money to pay the debt and realize their financial goals. So what that means for me is that when we hear back from you about the RFP, I'm going to be interested to know how we're able to address that, what we're actually able to do when we put the RFP out there to define what it is that the algorithm will look like and some of the other issues that have come up. And because I think your ability to write the RFP anyway we would like might be limited too. So I expect there to be some pretty lively back and forth on the question of what you actually put in there. And I think my question then for you is, in that process, if we told you we have limits, right? And if we said you have got to operate within certain bounds in terms of what you will accept, because when you issue the RFP, your goal is not to have to come back to us after that. Because, and I understand you on that point, you need to be able then to engage. But what will you accept in the end? And do we have a way of setting boundaries before you go out with the RFP in terms of broadly what the terms look like or what the cost structure is, what the cost will be to use the road? And I think that's what makes a lot of people anxious is there are things, especially because of our inability to get information from the prior project. There are questions about how this actually then works in the end. And so I guess point A is how much will you be able to kind of incorporate what you hear from us as you draft your RFP? And then what would be the circumstances on which you just say no? We didn't see anything that we think, there are a couple of people came in and they made proposals. We didn't see anything that we think aligns with the priorities that we heard from the CRTPO. And that is a question. I don't know what you can tell me right now about that, but I can tell you that's the kind of thing we're going to need to work on.
I can try and address that. And I think that's the intent of the indicative terms is to really set those guardrails to say, this is what we expect from the proposals. This is what we would require from the proposals. And if proposers can't meet that, then they won't be accepted. So I think that's the intent of the indicative terms and working with this organization and reaching out to industry partners to say, what are acceptable terms for this board? What would the industry expect to see? And when we actually advertise, if we were to advertise, those would be the guardrails that bidders would be bidding within. And I might just go back quickly if I can to there's been a lot of discussion about the 600 million and the corridor cap. That is certainly a major constraint for a project that exceeds $3 billion. But I think it's also important to point out that with this round of prioritization, there was only about $1 billion available in the statewide tier. So if you're asking for, if you're on Jones Street asking for changes to the corridor cap, additional funding would be great too.
Senator Sawyer, did you hear that?
So we will get asked, well, why? Why? Who says $1 billion? What's that number from? We pay our taxes. Why isn't that buying us roads? So I'm just telling this is something we have to deal with. And I probably have more experience than most people in terms of asking that question in Raleigh, but it's difficult for us to go back and say it must be like this because the normal funding structure isn't working, is what it really is. I think my personal view is I'm not comfortable, like I'm uneasy, but I think we need to take a step. I just don't think doing nothing, like telling them, okay, let's go for option A, and they have already told us what that entails. So my expectation is that I will come out in support of taking this step. If anybody has another idea, please let me know in time before or bring it up. But I don't see it. I'm not sure what that is. And I don't like the idea of telling the whole world that we don't have an answer on I-77. I drive it all the time, and I can tell you it's scary. It is really scary. I mean, at off-peak hours during the day, bumper to bumper for long stretches. I think we all know that. Ms. Swanson, I wanted to thank you for relieving Brett. He has been under.
Happy to help.
And you did a great job. He needed a little break and you gave it to him. That's what I have. Thank you.
Great. Other questions at this point? It sounds like our next steps are in October. We're the question will be, are we authorizing a work group to spell out our terms, our key terms? And I feel like everybody can be on the work group. I don't know that it would be like you, everybody. We'll set those times up again if we vote to go that way. But it's going to be the ask is, are we moving forward with the initial step of forming the RFQ with close collaboration of our work group and NCDOT? That would then come back. We would have at least 60 days to look at that before it would go to get advertised. So we're not at that final exit point.
Have
what
we
we're gonna ask in
formally
August.
asked to change the cap? And if so, why not?
I think that's a great question. I don't know that we have.
I have a hard time wrapping my head around why we don't talk about an option that is very similar to I-40 east and west out of Raleigh.
Mhm.
Real simple. That's another option that we don't ever talk about. Why don't we force that issue formally? This is a state issue, not a regional issue. This region is paying the consequence for the state not taking action. We have to force the issue formally. I think that needs to take place simultaneous.
That's a great point. And Mayor Higdon brought that up to begin with. So I think we could absolutely, if we pick a day and everybody will come together, let's go to Raleigh when they're in session.
I think we
And
unanimously support that.
Because I think that could change our decisions in a lot of ways here, you know, and have a different outcome.
realistically, time wise though, is that's, to get that done before P 7.0 closes. Loretta? Let's hear from the big people.
Well, maybe not.
And DC.
I would like to ask if you are going to Raleigh to petition for some changes, you have to represent your local government. The MPO is not allowed to lobby as a body. That's
Great point. And I think we'd be all be proud to represent our individuals. So we're going to take away two things from here today. Hearing loud and clear from Mayor Higdon and Councilmember Jones. We'll put our group together, pick a day. We will go as our representing our individual at the same time that we're working toward the conversation. So this will come back in October. I'm hearing everybody okay for our vote for the next step. That fair statement?
Yeah, I guess one thing just real fast, if, I don't know, Carpo or the city or somebody can come to our next meeting and give us, I mean, the county has a legislative liaison, but we don't build roads, so we don't really have transportation contacts. But if somebody can help advise this body about this question the good gentleman has raised and how to approach and whatever is, I just feel like it would be good before we all get in a car and drive over there to get some professional guidance from a lobbyist who has these specific contacts. Thank you.
Great.
Could I add just one quick comment? I want to
Go ahead.
just to, again, offer to everyone that if there are outstanding questions or concerns, we're happy to sit down with anybody that wants to sit down and talk through this and learn more about it and understand more about it. So just putting that out there. If anybody wants to reach out, please feel free.
Perfect. We'll make sure that if you don't already have Brett's contact information, Neil will circulate that for everybody. Again, in case you have additional technical questions before October. All right, we will move on to item 14, upcoming agenda items.
The October 16th CRTPO board agenda is anticipated to include the following items. Action to open a public comment period on the draft division needs local input point assignment for NCDOT P 7.0. Approval of the Title VI limited English proficiency plan update. Action requested on the strategic plan goal 5 implementation, specifically the elimination of the project oversight committee and revisions to the discretionary policy. Action requested to open a public comment period on the CRTPO complete streets policy, action to approve the Waxhaw Parkway CTP amendment, and action to direct NCDOT to pursue a project delivery option for the I-77 South Corridor. We have one information report, and that will be an update on the 2055 MTP. One quick announcement on the MOU. We have 22 of the 25 voting members have returned their executed MOU signature page to me. The other 3, I'm aware that they're either scheduled on their board agendas or they're sending that to me. So we should be in a position by next month to distribute this to NCDOT for signature by the governor or his designee. And that is all I have.
Great. Do we have some urgent updates for Division 10 and 12? Okay, in the interest of time and everyone's behinds going, yeah, exactly. little extra cookie day. Any other questions, comments from board members? Y'all have done a lot of marathon sessions and we truly, truly appreciate it. Entertain motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, let's adjourn.
Anybody